Chapter 1543. From the conversations of some palace maids and eunuchs, Song Qingshu learned that Yelu Hongji had already finished his court meeting and was in the imperial study meeting with the privy emissary of the northern courtyard, Yelu Isin. Song Qingshu thought it would be good to hear what they were talking about, so he hurried in the direction of the imperial study. Although he had never been to the study of Liao, he had been to the palaces of the Qing, Jin, and southern Song dynasties many times. No one knew the layout of the palaces better than he did. He roughly guessed the direction of the study and quickly found the right place. Even though the imperial palace was heavily guarded, Song Qingshu was now wearing the clothes of a palace attendant and had a certain degree of confusion. Coupled with his elusive Qing gong, he would occasionally use the soul-shifting technique to hypnotize the guards blocking his way when he really could not avoid them. Finally, he managed to sneak to the side of the imperial study. Suddenly, there was the sound of a teacup falling to the ground, followed by an angry roar. I gave him the most elite cavalry of the Gong division, but he still let Yelu Qi, Xiaoban, and those traitors run away with their families. Everyone in the world thinks I'm a joke. Song Qingshu knew that the speaker was most likely Yelu Hongji. From his words, he must be very dissatisfied with Xiao Feng. When he was escaping with Yelu Qi and the others, he didn't know that Xiao Feng was chasing them. But as he gathered more and more information, he naturally knew who was chasing them. King Xiao has tried his best, but he didn't expect those enemies to be so cunning. Then Yelu Isin's voice came from the room again. Although it seemed like he was comforting him, Song Qingshu knew that when Yelu Hongji was angry, it would not only not comfort him, but also add fuel to the fire. Sure enough, hearing his words, Yelu Hongji roared even louder. I know Xiao Feng's level on the battlefield better than you. In the past, he was always victorious against strong enemies, but now he can't catch up with the old, weak, women, and children. Do you believe it? Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. His voice was really loud. Perhaps he was worried that the guards outside would hear and leak the secret, so the guards around the imperial study had all been chased far away. That was why he was able to find the opportunity to eavesdrop here so easily. Maybe King Xiao has his own difficulties, Yelu Isin said hesitantly. Difficulties? Yelu Hongji harumphed coldly. Isn't it because he thinks Yelu Qi and Xiao Ban he were wrongly accused? That's why he came to the palace to plead on their behalf, but when he saw the evidence, he didn't dare to say anything. Most likely, he's still unconvinced. That's why he's pretending to agree, but secretly opposing. Then, Yelu Isin said, in fact, if you want to know whether King Xiao is loyal to the emperor or secretly disobeys, there's a simple way to judge. Oh, what method? Not only Yelu Hongji, even Song Qingshu couldn't help but be curious. Yelu Isin said unhurriedly, according to the latest intelligence, Yelu Qi and Xiao Ban have fled to Golden Snake Camp. Golden Snake Camp accepting traitors from our country is an extremely serious provocation. Your Majesty can use this reason to order King Xiao to lead the army to attack Golden Snake Camp and force them to hand over Yelu Qi and Xiao Ban. Song Qingshu was shocked to hear this. He didn't expect to hear news about Golden Snake Camp, and such bad news at that. Although he had expected Liao's revenge when he accepted Yelu Qi and Xiao Ban, he and Zhao Min had analyzed at that time that Liao had internal and external troubles. At most, they would quarrel with each other, but most likely it wouldn't escalate to the point of war. What's more, Golden Snake Camp wasn't weak at all. After all, Golden Snake Camp had been recuperating for a long time, allied with the Qing and Song kingdoms, and had no worries. Of course, it was better not to fight. After all, at this stage, accumulating strength was the way to go. Yelu Hongji obviously had the same thought as him. He frowned and said, we have no conflict with Golden Snake Camp. Moreover, the Qing and Jin kingdoms are watching us covetously. If we start a war with Golden Snake Camp now, I'm afraid, Yelu Isin said with a smile, Your Majesty is worrying too much. Of course, we won't really start a war with Golden Snake Camp. We are just using this to test King Zhao's reaction. If he directly agrees, it proves that he is still loyal to Your Majesty. But if he tries to make excuses, he didn't finish his sentence, but the meaning was clear. King Wei's plan is great. Yilu Hongji was overjoyed, causing Song Qing-shu, who was standing outside the room, to grumble incessantly. No wonder Yilu Hongji was known as a fatuous ruler in history. His ability to distinguish between good and bad was unparalleled. Even he could see the flaws in attacking the Golden Snake Battalion. How could Xiao Feng, a dragon among men, not be able to see through them? It would be a miracle if he agreed to attack Golden Snake Camp. While he was complaining, Song Qing-shu suddenly felt someone approaching. He hurriedly hid himself. It turned out that an eunuch had come forward to report, "Your Majesty, the king of the southern courtyard is here to see you." "Speak of the devil." Yilu Hongji laughed. "Quickly let him in." At this time, Yilu Isin said, "Your Majesty, it is not convenient for me to stay here. I will take my leave first." Who knew that Yilu Hongji waved his hand indifferently? No need. After a pause, he also felt that it was not appropriate for Yilu Isin to stand here and test Xiao Feng. He waved his hand to let him hide behind the screen. Song Qing-shu secretly shook his head. With Xiao Feng's martial arts, how could he not feel that there was an extra person in the room? What was the use of hiding behind the screen? But soon, a trace of surprise appeared on his face. He keenly sensed that Yilu Isin's aura had completely dropped. If he hadn't known in advance that Yilu Isin was hiding behind the screen, even he might have overlooked that there was someone here. Yilu Isin is actually a hidden expert? Song Qing-shu was naturally shocked. Moreover, he could see that Yilu Isin's martial arts were not ordinary. At this time, Xiao Feng had already entered the imperial study. He reported to the emperor the details of the pursuit of Yilu Qi, Xiao Ban, and the other clansmen. At the same time, he expressed his guilt and self-blame for not completing the mission. If he had heard these words 2 hours earlier, Yilu Hongji would probably still be angry. But now, he had something more important to worry about. After a few words of comfort, he threw out the question that he had prepared for a long time. Hearing that he was going to lead troops to attack Golden Snake Camp, Xiao Feng was so shocked that he instantly jumped out of his chair. "Your Majesty, this must not be done. Golden Snake Camp has previously annexed the Jianghuai region. Now, their power has greatly increased. They have more than 100,000 elite soldiers under their command. It is not so easy to defeat them. Moreover, Golden Snake Camp's leader, Song Qing-shu, is a godly commander. These years, he has continuously created miracles." Yilu Hongji coldly snorted and directly interrupted, "Don't boost the morale of others and belittle your own. No matter how powerful the surname Song is, he is only a Jianghu person. Those stories are mostly rumors and cannot be taken seriously." Xiao Feng knew that those who had not seen Song Qing-shu would mistakenly think that his abilities were fake. But only those who had seen him personally would know how terrifying he was. But Xiao Feng also knew that he could not make the emperor understand in a few words. He could only change his words. Not long ago, the Southern Song dynasty sent an envoy over and invited us to attack the Jin Kingdom with Golden Snake Camp. The Jin Kingdom is our great Liao's mortal enemy. How can we lose the bigger picture because of a small gain? Outside the window, Song Qing-shu sighed inwardly. Brother Xiao is really straightforward. He jumped into the trap that the other party set for him. Although what he said was very reasonable, the other party was already prejudiced. How could he listen to it? Chapter 1544. Yilu Hongji snorted and interrupted Xiao Feng. The Golden Snake Camp knew that they were about to form an alliance with Great Liao, but they still took in that traitor Yilu Qi. Even if the Golden Snake Camp has ulterior motives, now is not a good time to punish them. Wait until we destroy the Jin Kingdom. Then we can invite other countries to attack them together. After all, the Golden Snake Camp has been growing in power for the past few years, and all the surrounding countries feel threatened. Xiao Feng was still trying to persuade them. Outside the window, Song Qing-shu secretly sighed in relief. Fortunately, Xiao Feng was not in power in Liao, or else it would be a big problem. Xiao Feng was really something. He'd save him time and time again, but he still schemed against them. Of course, he also knew that his blame was unreasonable. After all, this was official business. If Xiao Feng did not think for his country, then he would not be Xiao Feng. As the saying goes, everyone has their own master, so there was nothing to criticize. To Song Qingshu's surprise, Yelu Hongji did not refute. Instead, he suddenly nodded and said, "My sworn brother is right. Thank you for your hard work these days." What followed was another joyous and harmonious scene. Outside the window, Song Qingshu was a little dazed. He thought that Yelu Hongji was really moved by him. After Xiao Feng left, Yelu Hongji immediately stopped smiling and said, "Prince Wei, I didn't expect you to be right. Your Majesty is wise." Yelu Yisin walked out from behind the screen. He had hidden himself very well, and his aura was also covered perfectly. Xiao Feng did not notice him. Only now did Song Qingshu realize that Yelu Hongji's performance just now was all an act. He couldn't help but lament that he had underestimated the wisdom of the ancient people. Although Yelu Hongji was a famous muddle-headed person in history, he had been an emperor for a long time, he still had the shrewdness and means necessary. "I am so angry." I shared the country with him, but he still had evil intentions. Yelu Hongji became angrier as he spoke. He smashed another teacup. Yelu Yisin timely said, "Your Majesty, please calm down. It just so happens that Xiao Xiama's sister is in the palace today. Your Majesty can go and see her." "Xiao Xiama colluded with Yelu Qi to rebel. I haven't even settled the score with him yet, but he's smart enough to offer his sister to me." Yelu Hongji naturally knew what Xiao Xiama was planning. It's rare for the prince consort to mend his ways. Moreover, the prince consort's younger sister is famous for her beauty. When she heard that her brother had committed a crime, she took the initiative to forgive him. "If your Majesty wants to punish someone, why don't you vent your anger on that beauty?" Yelu Yisin's words had a double meaning. Song Qingshu, who was outside the door, was dumbfounded. He thought that these grassland countries were indeed much more open in this regard. How could the officials of the Han dynasty dare to talk about this with the emperor? Sure enough, Yelu Hongji was tempted. I'm going to see what this legendary beauty looks like. If you're lying, I'll punish you and Xiao Xiama together." Yelu Yisin hurriedly said, "How could this subject dare to deceive your Majesty? I guarantee your Majesty will be satisfied." Outside the door, Song Qingshu frowned, wondering why Yelu Nanxian's father was like this. How did he give birth to such a pure and refined daughter? Soon, Yelu Yisin bid farewell to the emperor. Watching him leave, Song Qingshu wanted to take this opportunity to test him, but Yelu Hongji was also heading towards Shun Bijuan's palace. He couldn't help but hesitate, but in the end, he followed Yelu Hongji. If he didn't know Shun Bijuan, it wouldn't have mattered, but the two of them had been together for so long. She had even risked her life to visit him when he was injured. Not to mention, he had promised her father to save Shun Bijuan back in the Shun Garden. Song Qingshu took out the jade bracelet from his bosom and sighed. In the end, he still decided to help her first. Meanwhile, Shun Bijuan was feeling uneasy in the palace. She had been in the palace for so long, but she hadn't even seen the emperor's face. She didn't know how she was going to survive in the palace. When she thought about how she was going to avenge the Shun family, she couldn't help but be at a loss. Was her choice really wise? Although she was a young miss who never left her home, she was still a member of an official's family. She knew that Liao was like a sun setting over the western mountains. It was difficult for him to even protect himself. Did she really have the ability to help him get revenge? But there was nothing else she could do. Now that even the southern Song court wanted to kill her, she was destined to be abandoned by her country. The only person she could rely on was Liao. At this time, the voice she had heard that night suddenly appeared in her mind. But as soon as her expectation rose, it was extinguished by her reason. Song Qingshu and I are not related in any way. Why would he take such a great risk to help me? And I heard that he recently became the Prince of Qi in the Song Kingdom. Why would he offend an entire country for a woman like me? In the past, when she was in Shanin, she was still a bit conceited about her appearance, but during this period of time, all her pride was shattered to nothing. It made her realize how worthless things like beauty were in the eyes of those in power. For the sake of power, fame, and so on, They could sacrifice her without hesitation. Just as she was feeling sorrowful, she suddenly heard the rising and falling voices of "Long live the Emperor." She couldn't help but nervously stand up, her heart thumping fiercely. She didn't know how she should face the man who was about to enter. For some reason, she suddenly wanted to retreat. She felt that she had been too hasty in agreeing to Yelu Isen's request to enter the palace. But she also knew that there was no room for regret. Yelu Hongji quickly entered the palace. Shin Bijuan copied the surrounding palace, maids, and bowed. She was so nervous that she didn't even dare to look at him. She only dared to stare at the pair of feet on the ground. "Raise your head." Seeing Shun Bijuan's beautiful figure, Yelu Hongji was 70% satisfied. He wanted to see her face even more. He was the emperor. There was naturally no need for any tactful methods. He could directly give an order. A sliver of humiliation flashed through Shun Bijuan's heart. It had to be known that she had once been a famed beauty in Ishanin City. All the young masters of the aristocracy who wanted to see her had to expend a great deal of effort. But now, she had to raise her head like a piece of merchandise for a man to examine. But she had no other choice. She could only slowly raise her head, revealing a charming face that caused Yelu Hongji's breathing to become a bit heavier. He had heard Xiao Xiama and Yelu Isen describe how beautiful she was. In truth, he hadn't paid them much attention. After all, as the emperor, what kind of woman hadn't he seen? Especially since his empress was a devastatingly beautiful woman. He didn't believe that this woman could be more beautiful than his empress. But when Shun Bijuan raised her head, Yelu Hongji immediately realized he was wrong. This woman was more beautiful than any woman he had ever seen. Even his most beautiful empress was slightly inferior in appearance. Of course, the empress' natural charm was not something the young girl in front of him could compare to. All in all, the two of them were better at winning than the plums, orchids, bamboos, and chrysanthemums. "All of you leave." A ball of fire rose in Yelu Hongji's lower abdomen. He waved his hand at the eunuchs and palace maids in the room. Chapter 1545. While Yelu Hongji was sizing her up, Shun Bijuan was also sizing him up. The man in the dragon robe in front of her had a full beard and a majestic expression on his face. However, she was a young miss who grew up in the South. Her sense of beauty had been trained since she was a child to prefer handsome young masters. Even Xiao Shi Lang's bold and uninhibited style was something she liked. However, this bearded man was far beyond what she could bear. Seeing the eunuchs and maids scatter, Shun Bijuan's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Although she had decided to enter the palace, she found that she wasn't prepared. Yelu Hongji sat on the side of the bed and patted it, ordering, "Come here." Shun Bijuan's expression immediately changed. She had imagined countless scenarios with the emperor, but she hadn't expected him to be so direct. It seemed like he was going to pamper her right now. Seeing her stand there in a daze, Yelu Hongji couldn't help glancing at her with a dissatisfied expression. Shun Bijuan opened her mouth, but her throat was dry and she couldn't say anything. She couldn't help feeling regret. She usually thought of herself as intelligent and talented, but at this critical moment, her mind was completely blank. Yelu Hongji had a belly full of anger because of what had happened with Xiao Feng. Seeing her stuttering like this, he became even more displeased. Fortunately, Shun Bijuan's beauty was high enough. Otherwise, he would have already exploded. Seeing that she wasn't moving, Yelu Hongji assumed it was because of a young girl's shyness. He didn't care too much and directly walked forward, reaching out to grab her. Your Majesty." Shun Bijuan was so flustered that she couldn't speak properly. She wanted to find a reason to avoid this disaster, but her mind was blank and she couldn't think of anything. Yelu Hongji pulled her over to the window and kissed her on the face, causing Shun Bijuan to cry out in shock. She didn't know where she got the strength to push him away, but she hid in a corner like a frightened rabbit. After being rejected again and again, Yelu Hongji's expression couldn't help but darken. "Your family is becoming more and more outrageous." The older brother colluded with Yelu Qi to rebel, and the younger sister disobeyed us. "Do you want your family to be exterminated?" Hearing his words, Shen Bijuan finally remembered her goal for entering the palace. If she couldn't win the emperor's favor, how could she get revenge for her parents? But did she really have to give herself to this bear-like man in front of her? While she was distracted, Yalu Hongji took the opportunity to carry her to the bed. He tore off her outer robe. As the emperor of the 9-5 realms, in addition to his anger, he naturally did not have the heart to be gentle with the fair sex. Feeling a chill, Shen Bijuan's eyes filled with tears. But she was afraid of angering him and causing all of this to fail. She had no choice but to hold back her tears. She had never felt such pain before. Suddenly, Shen Bijuan's body sank as she felt the other party pressing down on her. Shen Bijuan almost fainted from the weight of his body. Has this moment finally come? She closed her eyes in resignation. After a long time, she opened her eyes with some surprise because the thing she imagined did not happen. The emperor pressed down on her body and did not move at all. What's wrong? Do you still enjoy the feeling of being pressed down by a man and can't bear to get up? At this moment, a teasing voice suddenly rang out beside him. Shen Bijuan turned around and saw a man leaning against the bed with a faint smile on his face. The familiar face made her relax a little. Who else could it be other than Zhao Wei? Why are you here? Shen Bijuan's mind was a little confused. If I wasn't here, you would have been he-he'd by Yalu Hongji. The person who came was naturally Song Qingshu. Although he was following behind Yalu Hongji, it still took some effort to avoid his imperial guards. Fortunately, he arrived in time and did not let Shen Bijuan be taken advantage of. Shen Bijuan's face turned red. Although she had never heard Fei Yuqing's classic jokes, it did not prevent her from understanding the meaning of he. Only then did she notice that Yalu Hongji had fainted. Her face paled in fright. What happened to him? Don't worry, he's not dead. He just fainted. Song Qingshu smiled. Shen Bijuan glared at him, clearly not understanding his nonchalant attitude. Don't you know that this is a crime punishable by the execution of 9 generations of your family? Hurry up and find a chance to slip out of the palace before anyone notices. I'll help you stall for time. Seeing her worried expression, Song Qingshu's lips curled up even more. This little girl was really kind. Even in a time like this, she still knew how to worry about him. You're still smiling? Shen Bijuan was about to go crazy. She felt that the person in front of her really didn't know what was important. He was actually still acting so sloppily. You really don't need to wear clothes? Song Qingshu pointed at her chest and teased. Shen Bijuan looked down and remembered that Yalu Hongji had just tore her jacket. She screamed in fright and turned around, her voice choked with sobs. Close your eyes. Song Qingshu curled his lips. Only a bit of your shoulders and arms are exposed. I can't see anything else. In my hometown, this isn't a big deal. However, Shen Bijuan didn't listen to him at all. She had been raised as a lady since she was young, so she felt that this was a matter of chastity. Seeing her extreme reaction, Song Qingshu knew he couldn't continue to tease her. He could only say, "What are you panicking about? Wasn't I already sent to the service room?" He wasn't lying. He had indeed been sent to the service room, but he hadn't become a eunuch in the end. Shen Bijuan had indeed been misled. At this time, she had already tidied up her clothes. She turned around and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring up your sad matters. It's nothing." Song Qingshu's open-minded attitude made Shen Bijuan admire him. How could he not be open-minded? There was nothing like that. That's right. Why did you save me? Shen Bijuan suddenly thought of something. As she asked, she looked worriedly at Yalu Hongji. The emperor had been knocked unconscious. How was she going to resolve this matter? Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. I was asked by your father before he died to save you. As he spoke, he took out a keepsake that Imperial Censor Shan had given him. Seeing her father's old keepsake, Shen Bijuan's tears immediately fell. Father, this was a keepsake that her father had promised her in private. Outsiders wouldn't know about it, and it would prevent anyone from stealing or robbing his keepsake to trick her. Miss Shun, my condolences. Seeing the girl in front of him pretend to be strong and only now reveal her weak side, Song Qingshu couldn't help but comfort her. Since you've seen my father, you must know how he died, right? Shun Bijuan cried for a while before raising her head and looking nervously at Song Qingshu. Chapter 1546. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment, and then roughly recounted what had happened that night. In the end, he added apologetically, "That person's martial arts were very high, and I was in a hurry to save him. So he escaped. If you had not appeared, my father would have suffered even more." Shun Bijuan was very understanding and did not blame him for this. "Right? Do you know the identity of that person?" Song Qingshu shook his head. That person was wearing a mask. It was clear that they were deliberately hiding any features that could reveal their identity. Who is so vicious that they want to destroy our Shun family. Shun Bijuan's fists were clenched, and there were faint traces of blood on her lips. Song Qingshu began to analyze. According to your father's last words, they should have come for the Shun family's deer cutting knife. Deer cutting knife, it's the deer cutting knife again. Thinking of how she, the crown princess, had become a prisoner because of this knife, and now the entire Shun family had been killed because of this knife, Shun Bijuan was filled with hatred. How does this broken knife have such a great power? Song Qingshu carefully looked at Shun Bijuan's reaction. Although Shun Yin claimed that he did not know the secret of the deer-cutting knife, it was difficult to guarantee that he did not deliberately say that to guard against him. Now, looking at Shun Bijuan's reaction, it was likely that he really did not know. After you were captured, whose hands did the knife fall into? Song Qingshu knew that as long as he knew who had the deer-cutting knife, then that person would be the one behind the scenes. Shun Bijuan opened her mouth to answer when she suddenly thought of something. She said with some suspicion, "You are not deliberately trying to get a confession from me, are you?" Her experiences in this period of time had made her less trusting of others, especially when Shui Yi's people had asked her the same question before. It naturally made her more vigilant. "You're a zither master. How can you know martial arts? Also, aren't you from outside the borders? How could you appear in Jiangnan's Shin Garden?" The more Shun Bijuan spoke, the more suspicious she became. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said half-truthfully, "I've been investigating your whereabouts because of your father's dying request. Not long ago, by chance, I found out that you were imprisoned in the Wei Palace. It just so happened that they were recruiting a musician, so I disguised myself as a musician and snuck into the palace. Those identities are all for the Wei Palace's inspection. So that's how it is." Shun Bijuan slowly nodded, but she still didn't dispel the misgivings in her heart. "You aren't related to my Shan family at all. Why did you spend so much effort to save me? I don't believe that there is such a good person in this world who doesn't ask for anything in return." Everything that had happened in this period of time had allowed her to see the ugliness of the human heart. Song Qingshu didn't know how to explain. He could only say jokingly, "Maybe Miss Shun is too beautiful. You know, men can't resist the attraction of beautiful women." Shun Bijuan had been in the middle of aggressively questioning him, but when she heard his reply, she couldn't help but be startled. Her snow-white skin instantly blushed. "Pei, you're still not obedient after being castrated." Song Qingshu held his breath. This little girl was becoming less and less like a lady from a noble family. At this time, Shun Bijuan also realized that something was wrong. She said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." What else could Song Qingshu say? He could only wave his hand and say, "Forget it. A great person doesn't remember a small person's wrongdoings." Shun Bijuan couldn't help but be speechless. Seeing that he had started to rummage through Yelu Hongji, she couldn't help but be shocked. What if you wake him up? Her attention had been diverted by the news of Shun Yuan. Now that she had returned to her senses, she couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. They were now in the palace. When Yelu Hongji woke up, she and Zhao Wei would be unable to escape. That's to wake him up. Song Qingshu smiled at her, and then released Yelu Hongji's sleeping acupuncture point. Yelu Hongji opened his eyes in a daze. Before he could figure out what was going on, he was attracted by a pair of incomparably dark eyes in front of him. There was a voice in the dark telling him, "You've bestowed on the new concubine who entered the palace. She makes you very satisfied. You will be pleased and bestow her the title of Concubine Hui." Seeing Yelu Hongji open his eyes, Shin Bijuan was so scared that her hair stood on end. But what surprised her was that Yelu Hongji didn't fly into a rage. Instead, he just sat there with a blank expression. Listening to Song Qingshu's words, Shin Bijuan was confused. Just as she was feeling strange, she saw Yelu Hongji nod his head and repeat what he just said mechanically. Then, he fell asleep again. What exactly is going on? Shin Bijuan was completely confused and couldn't help but ask. Song Qingshu casually replied, "It's just a little bit of Jianghu magic. It can make him forget what just happened, so you don't have to worry about him punishing you when he wakes up." That's amazing. Shin Bijuan opened her mouth. She still hadn't recovered from shock. After dealing with Yelu Hongji's matter, Song Qingshu asked again, "Now you should tell me who has the deer-cutting knife, right?" Thinking that the other had her father's keepsake, Shin Bijuan didn't hide it anymore. When the convoy was attacked by Xiao 11 Lang and his men, I was kidnapped by him all the way to Shangjing. Song Qingshu suddenly had a strange expression. He was also the one who came to steal the wedding today. I can see that he treats you pretty well. He did treat me politely along the way. Shin Bijuan sighed faintly. But if he hadn't captured me, I wouldn't have become a prisoner. He's just a knife in someone else's hand. He didn't have a choice. Song Qingshu naturally didn't want to slander others. In some ways, Xiao 11 Lang was pretty good. That's right. Even though he's the deputy inspector of the Imperial Palace, he was saved by the Prince of Wei, Yelu Yisin, when he was young, so he secretly listens to Yelu Yisin. Shin Bijuan was a famous talented woman. After a period of interaction, she had figured out the relationship between Xiao 11 Lang and Yelu Yisin. He doesn't hide anything from you. Song Qingshu laughed softly, but his heart grew heavy. It really was Yelu Yisin. He had guessed it before, but he wasn't sure. Now that he was about to become enemies with Yelu Nanxian's father, he was still very conflicted. I don't know how Murong Jingwei influenced him. Song Qingshu naturally knew that there was another cunning fox hiding behind the other. Didn't you say that beautiful women always have an advantage in this area? Shin Bijuan's smile was full of self-mockery. It was clear that beauty didn't bring her happiness, but more misfortune. The darkest time is over. Everything will change for the better, trust me, Song Qingshu said in a low voice. Shin Bijuan smiled, clearly taking it as a comforting remark and didn't take it seriously. Sleep for a while. You probably didn't sleep at all last night. Sensing the tiredness in her eyes, Song Qingshu comforted her. Shin Bijuan glanced at Yelu Hongji and smiled bitterly. How can I sleep in a situation like this? I will protect you from the side. Don't worry and sleep. Song Qingshu picked up Yelu Hongji and threw him behind the screen so he wouldn't scare Shin Bijuan. But Shin Bijuan still didn't move. Instead, she looked at him as if she wanted to say something. Song Qingshu finally reacted and couldn't help but laugh. Did you forget that I just came out of the greeting chamber? It wasn't that he had a fetish for pretending to be a eunuch, but that he would be visiting Shin Bijuan's place often in the future. With this identity as a cover, it would avoid a lot of awkwardness. I'm sorry. Only then did Shin Bijuan react. Thinking about how her father had asked him to save her, and he had actually sacrificed so much, she was filled with guilt. She thought that if she showed any disdain for him, wouldn't that hurt him too much? With this thought, she couldn't chase him out. She reached out to unbutton her clothes and planned to go to bed. Chapter 1547. Seeing Shin Bijuan undress in front of him, Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. Even though he had purposely misled the other in order to make it easier for them to interact later, it was too careless of her to take off her clothes in front of him. However, it was not convenient for him to say it now. After all, if she knew the truth, it would be troublesome if she became angry. However, he didn't want to take advantage of her and turned around without a trace. A woman's thoughts were more delicate. Even though his movement was light, Shin Bijuan still noticed it. She hadn't expected him to be such a gentleman. Her heart warmed and her gaze softened. However, when she thought about how he had been sent to the greeting room, she felt uncomfortable. Last night, thinking about entering the palace, Shun Bijuan was restless and couldn't sleep. Today, she experienced the kidnapping of the bride and the fright from Yelu Hongji. Now that she could finally relax, Shun Bijuan felt sleepy and quickly fell asleep. She didn't know how long she slept when she suddenly felt someone push her on the bed. Shun Bijuan woke up in fright and tightly covered her chest with the blankets. Seeing her like a frightened rabbit, Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. I just wanted to remind you that Yelu Hongji is about to wake up. You should prepare ahead of time. So it's you. Shin Bijuan gradually came back to herself and showed a trace of embarrassment. She suddenly noticed the light outside and said in surprise, "I slept all night?" Song Qingshu also had a depressed expression. "I didn't expect you to sleep for so long. I wanted you to rest for a while, and I would rest. However, seeing you sleeping so soundly, I didn't have the heart to wake you up." Shin Bijuan blushed at the thought of a well-bred girl who didn't care about her manners and slept like a dead pig. "Thank you. Last night was the best sleep she had ever had. Ever since she was kidnapped, she was always worried about being humiliated, so even the slightest movement would wake her up. It had been a long time since she had experienced the feeling of being able to sleep all the way until the sun rose. In a bit, just pretend that the emperor favored you last night." Song Qingshu began to instruct. "But I'm worried that if I don't act properly, he'll find out," said Shin Bijuan timidly. Song Qingshu comforted her. "Don't worry. He's been enchanted by my illusions. He won't find any flaws." However, the eunuchs in the palace are a bit troublesome. He had been in the imperial palace for a long time and naturally knew that there were specialized people who recorded the emperor's daily life, especially the emperor's favored concubines. There were incomparably detailed records. This was because the emperor was worried that the bloodline of the imperial family was impure and that the heirs of others would steal the throne. "The others are fine, but we still need to find a piece of white silk with a red stain." Song Qingshu pointed out the biggest flaw. Shin Bijuan was dumbfounded. Although there was a lack of knowledge in this era, women still knew about this. Her face immediately turned red and she stammered, How can I? Seeing her nervous expression, Song Qingshu could not help but sigh that the imagination of the people in this world was really poor. If it was in the future, anyone who had watched TV would know that a little bit of blood would be enough to solve the problem. It's not like I'm telling you to actually make a red stain. Song Qingshu could only teach the ignorant young women of this world about hygiene. Just bite your finger and sprinkle some on the bed. "You're using mine?" Shin Bijuan still hadn't come back to her senses. At the same time, she greatly admired the other's strange thinking. He had so easily thought of a solution. "Are you going to use mine?" Song Qingshu rolled his eyes. Although he had tender feelings for the fairer sex, that didn't mean he would help the other without any principles. "All right." Shin Bijuan felt a bit wronged at his retort, but she still reached out a trembling finger. Song Qingshu sighed with emotion when he saw that she wanted to say it several times, but couldn't. "You're indeed a rich young lady." After saying that, he pulled her hand and used his sword energy to make a cut on her finger. Shin Bijuan let out a cry, but she realized something and quickly closed her mouth. Tears were about to come out of her eyes. Squeezing out a few drops of blood from her finger on the bed, Song Qingshu nodded. "That's about it." Shin Bijuan pulled her hand back and gently sucked on her finger. She said timidly, "You're hurting me." Being stared at by a beautiful young woman with watery eyes and hearing her speak in such a tone, even with Song Qingshu's strong will, his heart couldn't help but waver. "Your Majesty, it's time to prepare for court." A eunuch's voice came from outside the door. Song Qingshu didn't dare tarry. He quickly gave Shun Bijuan a few instructions and then undid Yelu Hongji's sleeping acupuncture point. He took the chance to hide behind the screen to make sure nothing would go wrong. Shin Bijuan came from a family of officials. Although she was a bit nervous and shaky at the start, she adjusted herself better and better. She managed to deal with the situation without any danger. As expected, Yelu Hongji didn't find anything wrong. Because his soul had been moved, he thought that he had pampered the other last night. His desire to conquer had been satisfied and his mood improved. He made her a consort and gave her a large pile of things. Only then did he go to court, satisfied. Since it was almost daybreak, Song Qing-shu naturally couldn't stay in Shun Bijuan's palace any longer. After all, the palace maids and housemaids would come in soon. So after saying goodbye to her, he returned to his own courtyard. Just as he returned to his room, there was a knock on the door. Song Qing-shu stilled. He opened the door and saw eunuch Gao, the one who had saved him in the greeting room, standing at the door. The two of them casually exchanged a few nonsensical words before eunuch Gao finally revealed his intentions. In a few days, the Empress will hold a court music festival. I will think of a way to get you in. However, how to attract the Empress' attention and how to stand out will depend on your abilities. Empress? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be startled. You don't know your mission? Eunuch Gao asked suspiciously. Song Qing-shu's heart shook, and he quickly nodded. I know. It's just that when I entered the palace yesterday, I heard the eunuchs say that the Empress is a celestial beauty. I was a bit curious. Eunuch Gao smiled and said, That's right. The Empress has always been the most beautiful. The 3 palaces and 6 courtyards dote on her. But now that Consort Hui has entered the palace, I think the 2 empresses will be equal in the future. After chatting for a while, eunuch Gao warned him before he left. Think about how to stand out. Otherwise, when King Wei blames you, no one can save you. Song Qing-shu agreed, while secretly having a headache. He didn't know what kind of mission King Wei had assigned to the real Zhao Wei. Now that things had come to this, he could only take one step at a time. At the same time, he couldn't help but be extremely curious about the beautiful Empress. Chapter 1548. Song Qing-shu was curious about the Empress. It was not only because he had heard the eunuchs and serving girls talk about her when he entered the palace yesterday, describing how beautiful she was. More importantly, it was because he had been investigating Murong Jingyue's whereabouts and suspected that he was hiding in the palace. So when he rescued Xiao Zhonghui, he had asked her about it. After all, she had been in the palace for so many years and could easily find abnormalities. In the end, after rescuing her and Yuan Qingji, Xiao Zhonghui told him that she had always felt that there was one person in the palace who was very suspicious. That was the Empress, the head of the harem. Once she entered the palace, she was doted on by thousands. The harem had never been a good place. Many concubines had secretly schemed against her, but every time, she had survived the crisis safely. What was even more exaggerated was that the concubines who had schemed against her would soon receive their retribution, and each of them had a tragic end. As a result, there were all kinds of strange rumors in the harem. Because the Empress was called Xiao Guanyin, everyone said that she was the reincarnation of Goddess Guanyin, and no one dared to go against her. Xiao Guanyin. Song Qing-shu was secretly surprised. This Empress of Liao was very famous in history. It seemed that she had been involved in a case of adultery with a palace servant. Although the mainstream view was that she had been wrongly accused, there were also people who believed that the adultery was not groundless. I wonder who has this luck with women. Song Qing-shu thought nosily. According to the descriptions of the people in the palace, this Empress was skilled in music and was extremely beautiful. She could be said to be the best among women. If one could become her guest, even if that person was sentenced to death, his life would not be in vain. With all these messy thoughts in his mind, Song Qing-shu fell asleep on the bed. After all, he had not slept for a night and was somewhat tired. Although with his current cultivation, it would not matter if he did not sleep for a day or two. Sleep was better than no sleep at all. As for sleeping in the palace during the day, it was not a problem. In any case, he had just been cleansed from the room of worship and should be resting, so no one would disturb him. After sleeping for most of the day, Song Qing-shu decided to take a stroll around the palace after waking up. He wanted to see if he could get any information about the Empress so that he could prepare for the upcoming mysterious mission. In the end, he didn't get any information on the Empress, but heard another, even more shocking news. Because consort Wen Xiao Zhonghui was suspected of having an affair with a man in her bedroom, the inspector of the imperial palace was removed from his post and investigated due to his lack of supervision. Originally, it would have been fine if the inspector of the front palace was dismissed, But this person was someone that Song Qingshu knew. He was Xiao Feng's father, Xiao Yuanshan. When Xiao Yuanshan was young, he was the chief instructor of the Shan army under the Empress Dowager. His martial arts skills were well known in Liao. Unfortunately, he was attacked outside the Yinmen Pass and disappeared for 30 years. Not long ago, he returned to the country with Xiao Feng. When Yalu Hongji learned of his identity, he was very pleased and immediately appointed him as the chief inspector of the palace and put him in charge of the imperial palace's security. Consort Wen has been in the palace for 2 years, and Lord Xiao has only been in office for a few months. Why would he put him in charge? Obviously, the people in the palace were also shocked by this. A pair of young eunuchs who were passing by whispered to each other, "Do you want to die? How dare you try to figure out the emperor's intentions in private? In this palace, the more you talk, the more mistakes you make. The less you know, the better." An older eunuch next to him hurriedly lectured him. "Yes, yes, yes." The young eunuch hurriedly nodded. Although the two's voices were soft, they couldn't escape Song Qingshu's ears. Watching them gradually disappear into the distance, he couldn't help but secretly sigh. In this world where human lives were like grass, these small characters could only do their best to protect their lives. The young eunuchs had their doubts because of their limited vision, but it was not difficult for Song Qingshu, who had enough information, to understand the meaning behind this. Looks like Yalu Hongji is going to make a move on Xiao Feng. Yesterday, Song Qingshu was almost fooled by the scene of the emperor and his official enjoying themselves. It can only be said that these politicians were all natural actors. Following that, Song Qingshu secretly left the palace and told Zhao Min and Icy Snow about the progress in the palace. After all, the two girls were still worried about him. After listening to his story, Zhao Min obviously came to the same conclusion. Xiao Feng is finished. Song Qingshu only guessed that Yalu Hongji was going to make a move on Xiao Feng, but he wasn't sure how long it would take. Zhao Min was born in the royal family, so she couldn't be more clear about this drama. Let's wait and see. Yalu Hongji will make a move on Xiao Feng at the earliest tonight, or at the latest tomorrow, Zhao Min said directly. So fast. Song Qingshu was extremely shocked. This speed was far beyond his expectations. This is what it means to cut a tangled knot with a sharp knife. Zhao Min chuckled lightly. If even you think it's impossible, then Xiao Feng definitely won't think of it. On the contrary, the longer it drags on, the more Xiao Feng will be prepared. It won't be so easy for Yalu Hongji to make a move. If my guess is correct, Yalu Hongji will use Xiao Yuanshan's dismissal as an excuse to summon his Xiao Feng to the palace as a form of consolation. Once he enters the palace, it will be much easier to deal with him. Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. After a long time, he sighed. I didn't know what it meant to destroy one's own great wall, but this time, I'm seeing it with my own eyes. You look hesitant. Are you planning to secretly inform Xiao Feng? Zhao Min suddenly asked. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he still said, After all, he and I have known each other for a while, and I really admire his character. If I knew he was in danger and did nothing, it would be difficult for me to bear with my conscience. However, Zhao Min said seriously, if you were just a Jianghu hero, then I would naturally agree with you saving him ahead of time. But now that your ambition is to conquer the world, how can you let your emotions affect your decisions? If you save Xiao Feng now, will it benefit your cause? On the contrary, when Yalu Hongji destroys his own Great Wall, Liao will not be able to recover. At that time, it will be easy for Golden Snake Camp to take over Liao's territory. Otherwise, are you prepared to face the brave and invincible Xiao Feng on the battlefield? The reason why Song Qingshu hesitated was because he could see everything clearly with his reason. But reason was one thing, and emotion was another. Don't forget the purpose of coming this time is to stop Liao from going south and the Song Kingdom to attack the Jin Kingdom. Zhao Min sneered. At the side, Icy Snow finally said, Princess, you don't have to blame him too much. In fact, I also don't want to see him become a cold-blooded person who only cares about benefits and not friendship. Zhao Min rolled her eyes and said, Sister, You spoil him too much. You always think for his sake. Song Qing-shu laughed mischievously and said, when a woman is 3 years older, she will hug a golden brick. A gentle big sister is the best. Fine, fine, fine. I'm the bad guy. Zhao Min pouted, obviously starting to sulk. Song Qing-shu hurriedly flattered her. Princess, your wisdom is unparalleled. You can be said to be the zhuge liang among women. You definitely have a way to satisfy both loyalty and righteousness. Zhao Min's expression became better. She snorted and said, it is not that there is no way to fulfill the interests of Golden Snake Camp and fulfill your brotherhood. Chapter 1549. Song Qing-shu's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly leaned over. I hope you can forgive me. Zhao Min rolled her eyes and said, you can first sit and watch Yelu Hongji make his move and then rescue him from the prison. Isn't that good? Not only will this help the brotherhood, but you may also be able to subdue a powerful general. Isn't it killing 2 birds with 1 stone? Song Qing-shu hesitated. But what if Yelu Hongji doesn't just imprison him but kill him? Zhao Min shook her head. Based on my understanding of Yelu Hongji's character, he won't choose to kill Xiao Feng. First, Xiao Feng is his sworn brother and also the king of the southern courtyard of Liao. These years, he is the god of war in the hearts of the Chitons. Killing him would cause too much noise. Second, with his personality, he will most likely lead his army to the Golden Snake Camp and force you to hand over Yelu Qi and Xiao Banhe. Of course, if he wins, it's fine. But if he is defeated by you, he will fly into a rage out of humiliation and Xiao Feng may really die. The way of thinking of these people in power is really traceable. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. During the period of the 3 kingdoms, Tianfeng also persuaded Yuan Shao not to be imprisoned for the southern expedition. Then, Yuan Shao suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of Guandu. The jailer excitedly told him that he could be released. Tianfeng lamented that if Yuan Shao won the Battle of Guandu and was in a good mood, he would really be released. Now that Yuan Shao was defeated, he would really be dead. What happened later was just as he expected. Listening to the princess' words is better than reading for 10 years. Song Qing-shu bowed. His mood suddenly became cheerful. Zhao Min smiled slightly. You are just too concerned. Speaking of which, how are you getting along with the eldest miss of the Shun family? Why do you sound so weird? Song Qing-shu hesitated and didn't tell them about how he saved her from Yelu Hongji last night. After all, he didn't want to arouse the jealousy of the 2 girls. In order to divert their attention, he hurriedly mentioned the mission about the Empress. After listening to his description, Zhao Min fell into deep thought. No wonder Yelu Isin wanted a musician to go in. It was to get close to the Empress. She suddenly thought of something and looked at him suspiciously. The people in the palace let a man like you into the palace? No reaction at all? Of course I did. Song Qing-shu gloomily recounted his visit to the worship room, making Zhao Min burst into laughter. Even Icy Snow couldn't help but smile. After laughing enough, Zhao Min continued. Since Yelu Isin wanted to make sure you went in as a man and let you get close to the Empress, he obviously wanted you to hook up with the Empress. Song Qing-shu frowned. As the master of the harem, the Empress has a high status. Why would she take a fancy to a mere musician? Why is Yelu Isin so confident that Zhao Wei can complete the mission? Zhao Min spread her hands. I am also very curious, but you need to investigate this yourself. Looks like it's time to go to the Empress. Song Qing-shu nodded. Xiao Zhonghui also said that if there was a suspicious person in the palace, it would be the Empress. If he wanted to find out what secrets she had, he had to see the Empress personally. By the way, I heard that the Empress is a peerless beauty. When the time comes, our first young master Song won't fall into her honey trap and forget about his duties. Will he? Zhao Min suddenly moved her face closer and said in an incomparably mocking tone. Smelling the elegant fragrance coming from her body, Song Qing-shu's heart couldn't help but sway. No matter how beautiful that Empress is, can she be more beautiful than the princess and sister Icy Snow? I can even control myself in front of you. How can I fall for her beauty trap? Icy Snow blushed. Don't drag me into your flirting. I don't dare to compare my looks to the princess's younger sister. Zhao Min immediately blushed and said angrily, Sister, what nonsense are you talking about? Whoever says that you're not as beautiful as me must be blind. Looking at the two women quarreling, Song Qingshu didn't think that the harmony between them was fake. For Icy Snow, she was using the identity of Lady Hu and would definitely not reveal their relationship in this life. For Zhao Min, there would be no conflict of interest between her and Icy Snow at all. Instead, because of their ambiguous relationship, she and Icy Snow were in the same boat. It's better than the harem being in a mess. Song Qingshu wiped his cold sweat. Because the situation in the palace was changing rapidly, he didn't dare to go out for long. After bidding farewell to the two women, he returned to the palace. However, as soon as he returned to the palace, a palace maid happened to be standing at his door. Seeing him return, she immediately said with dissatisfaction, Where have you been? Song Qingshu was taken aback. Sister is looking for me? Although Zhao Wei was older than the other party, he could tell that the other party was an elder in the palace at a glance. As the saying went, it was easy to meet the king of hell, but difficult to deal with the little devil. Calling her sister would avoid some unnecessary trouble. Who else can I look for if not you? The palace maid snorted angrily. Zhao Wei, Her Majesty the Empress invites you over. Empress? Song Qingshu was really taken aback. He was just worrying about how to stand out in the next palace banquet to attract the Empress' attention. Who knew that she would come looking for him? Hurry up. We have been delayed for a long time. There was dissatisfaction in the palace maid's tone. She turned and led the way in front. Song Qingshu had no choice but to follow. At the same time, he secretly thought, why would the Empress look for me? Logically speaking, Zhao Wei and the Empress don't know each other. Why would the high and mighty Empress summon a zither player who just entered the palace? How do I address you, sister? In order to probe for information, Song Qingshu could only start with his palace maid. My surname is Shan, the palace maid replied coldly. Hello, Sister Shan. Why is Her Majesty suddenly looking for me? As he spoke, Song Qingshu took out a piece of gold jewelry and handed it over. Palace maid Shan took the jewelry, and her expression became better. Her Majesty is an immortal-like person. How can we, as servants, speculate about her intentions? However, you do not have to be perturbed. It should be a good thing that Her Majesty is looking for you today. Good thing? Song Qingshu's expression was strange. He thought, if the real Zhao Wei was here, he would probably pee his pants in fear. He had just entered the palace and was summoned by the Empress. Who knew if he would accidentally lose his head? However, Song Qingshu was skilled and bold. Seeing that he could not get any useful information, he calmly walked towards the bedchambers of the palace. Along the way, palace maid Shan led him to remote places with few people. Song Qingshu couldn't help but become suspicious. Could it be that the Empress' invitation is just a pretense, and someone wants to harm me? But his worry did not last long. His vision suddenly brightened. A grand palace stood in front of him. With his familiarity with the palace, he quickly recognized that a palace of this scale could only be used by the Empress. What puzzled him was that they did not come to the main door of the bedchambers, but walked in from a side door. How sneaky. One look, and I could tell he's up to no good. Song Qingshu also became vigilant. He did not know if it was because palace maid Shan led them to a remote place or for some other reason, but they did not encounter any other palace maid along the way. Even Song Qingshu felt his hair stand on end. He felt as if he had fallen into a huge trap. Suddenly, he caught a whiff of a sweet fragrance that smelled like orchid and musk. It turned out that the two of them had entered a side hall. Her Majesty, I have brought Zhao Wei. Palace maid Shan knelt down and bowed. Got it. You can leave now. A sweet and charming voice rang out softly. He did not know if he had caught a cold or something these 2 days, but he had a slight fever and felt dizzy, so he did not update yesterday. He was very sorry. Chapter 1550. The meaning of the words was very normal, but the voice made one's heart beat faster, and face flush. It really could be called seductive, seductive to the bone. Song Qing-shu was secretly amazed. Could it be that this empress knew the art of seduction? No wonder she was favored by 3,000 people. At the same time, what made him feel strange was that this voice sounded somewhat familiar, but after thinking about it carefully, he could not remember whose voice it was. He looked up curiously and saw a woman with a beautiful figure lying on her side on a chair behind layers of gauze curtains. The exaggerated and graceful line between her waist and buttocks was enough to make any man go crazy. It's a pity I can't see her face. Song Qing-shu was filled with regret. Although his cultivation was profound, he did not know how to see through things. If there was only a thin layer of gauze, he might be able to see clearly, but these layers of curtains were enough to block his vision. I heard you were a new musician in the palace. After palace attendant Shan left, the empress spoke again. Song Qing-shu's heart jumped when he heard this. This voice was too seductive. She didn't seem like a motherly empress, but a courtesan of the Qinhuai River. Your Highness, I just entered the palace 2 days ago. Song Qing-shu's heart suddenly shook. He was used to seeing great beauties. Why was he so aroused without even seeing the other person? His nose wrinkled. Smelling the sweetness in the air, he couldn't help but think. When he had entered the room, he had felt that the fragrance in the air was too sweet. Now that he thought about it carefully, he feared that there was a certain aphrodisiac in the fragrance. While his cultivation was high and he was almost immune to all poisons, this aphrodisiac was not poison. It only aroused some thoughts in people's hearts. So even he couldn't help but fall for it. This empress is becoming more and more mysterious. Song Qing-shu's curiosity about her grew. Ben Gong heard that you were good at the guqin. Then play a song here. The empress' lazy but flirtatious voice came again from behind the gauze curtains. Song Qing-shu's thoughts raced. From the empress's words, someone must have secretly recommended him to her. This person clearly didn't have good intentions. If he wasn't mistaken, it should be Yelu Isen's people. It seemed that they really planned to let Zhao Wei hook up with the empress. Where did they get their confidence from? Although Song Qing-shu boasted of his charm, he was not so arrogant as to think that he could conquer the empress, who was the mother of the world, with his ordinary identity as a zither player. Moreover, he would not really do such a thing for Yelu Isen. But now was not the time for a showdown. He still had to deal with what needed to be dealt with. Now that the empress asked him to play the guqin, he could not just turn around and leave. Song Qing-shu took a look and found that a zither had been prepared next to him. He sat down and began to think about what to play for her. However, he had learned in the crash course, so it was really difficult for him to be as skillful as a real master. Thus, he could only play the song that he was most familiar with. After playing, Song Qing-shu blushed a little. He felt that he didn't play very well this time. At most, he could only be considered average. The empress was probably going to be disappointed. That was fine, but the main problem was how to explain it to Yelu Isen. Unexpectedly, the empress did not show any disappointment. Instead, she asked, I heard you are from Jiangnan. Huh? Song Qing-shu was surprised. The empress clearly didn't really care about things like guqin skills. No wonder Yelu Isen had asked Shun Bijuan to teach him the customs of the south. It seemed that he had prepared it to deal with the empress. I am indeed from Jiangnan. Song Qing-shu was also curious. Why was she, the Empress of Liao, so interested in the news of Jiangnan? What major events have happened in Jiangnan recently? Tell me. The Empress moved her body, clearly adjusting her posture. Song Qing-shu was surprised. He didn't expect that she wouldn't ask him about the customs of the South. It seemed that all of Yelu Isen's previous preparations had been in vain. However, this wasn't a problem for him because he had left Jiangnan not long ago. In the end, Wu Qianda of the Deshan Wu clan defeated Murong Fu of Gusu's Murong clan and obtained the position. Another major event was the crown princess of the Southern Song dynasty, the eldest young lady of the Shun clan. She was kidnapped and her whereabouts are unknown. In addition, the Shun clan of Shanin was exterminated in one night. Song Qing-shu thought about the major events that had happened not long ago and picked out the most dramatic events. He thought that the empress, who was deep in the palace, would be curious about these events. Of course, he instinctively skipped over his own matters. Who knew that after he finished speaking, the Empress would not comment? After a long time, she finally opened her mouth and said, "I heard that some time ago, the Golden Snake King Song Qing also arrived in Jiangnan and was conferred the title of Prince of Qi." Not expecting that she would take the initiative to inquire about his affairs, Song Qing was immediately dumbfounded. No matter how narcissistic he was, he wouldn't be narcissistic enough to think that he could use his title to cause ripples in the Emperor's heart. He truly didn't understand what the other party's intentions were. Song Qing was indeed conferred the title of Prince of Qi because he rescued several dozen Song princesses from the Jin and facilitated the return of Sichuan by the Mongols. So, before he could finish, the Empress interrupted him and asked, "I heard that he also had a marriage alliance with two of the princesses he rescued." Song Qing was startled, but he still answered truthfully, "That's right, he did have a marriage agreement with Princess Chengde and Princess Rufu of the Southern Song dynasty." The Empress sneered, "Humph, the two princesses, the Southern Emperor is quite willing to part with them." Song Qing smiled awkwardly. He couldn't figure out the other party's intentions, so he didn't know how to answer. The Empress asked again, "Are Princess Chengde and Princess Rufu beautiful?" "They are quite beautiful." Song Qing was just about to answer, but he suddenly remembered Zhao Wei's identity and hurriedly changed his words. "The two princesses are high and mighty. I'm just a commoner. How can I see the two princesses' true faces?" "What do you mean by high and mighty? Aren't you just from the laundry yard?" The Empress snorted, and her tone was obviously a little indignant. Why does the Empress seem to be jealous? Song Qing quickly put this thought out of his mind. It was really too ridiculous. At this moment, the eunuch's sharp voice suddenly sounded from afar. "The Emperor has arrived." Song Qing was stunned. He didn't want to meet Yelu Hongji at this time. After all, the higher-ups were temperamental. Now that Zhao Wei's status was low, if he were to be pushed down and beheaded by Yelu Hongji, he would have no choice but to expose his identity. "Your Highness, I'll take my leave first," Song Qing said hurriedly. The Empress, who was behind the gauze curtain, suddenly sat up straight. Her voice was less lazy and more anxious than before. "It's too late. Quickly hide in the room." "What?" Song Qing couldn't believe his ears. If he went out and met the Emperor now, he would at most be reprimanded. If he was discovered hiding in the Empress's bedroom, it would really be like yellow mud falling on his crotch. It would really be like *T, even if it wasn't. Although he was a eunuch on the surface, there was no lack of palace maids and even concubines in the palace who were lonely and hung out with eunuchs. If he was treated as a food target by Yelu Hongji, it would be over. Moreover, he wasn't a real eunuch. "Why are you in a daze?" At this time, there was a sudden fragrance. It turned out that the Empress had already quickly walked out from behind the gauze curtain. She pulled his hand and walked inside. Chapter 1551. Xiao Guanin's hands were very soft. In addition, a small part of her white, jade-like arm peeked out from her sleeves. It made one's heart skip a beat. However, the current Song Qing was no longer an inexperienced young man. He wasn't captivated by her. Instead, he carefully sized her up because he felt a strange sense of familiarity from her. Her eyebrows were like a painting, and her face was filled with peach blossoms. Her slender red phoenix eyes revealed a different kind of charm. Coupled with her alluring figure, it was just as the palace maids and eunuchs had described. She was a seductress who could charm people to death. Song Qing was puzzled. He had never seen the other's face before, but the sense of familiarity grew stronger. Xiao Guanin pulled him into the room and said in a low voice, "Hide here later. If you don't want to die, don't make a sound." Finishing, she didn't wait for his response and rushed to greet the Emperor. "This is really strange." Smelling the enchanting fragrance in the room, Song Qing didn't understand why the other had lured him into her bedroom. Wasn't this giving her a handle? If Yelu Hongji found out, the two of them, who were clearly innocent, wouldn't be able to explain themselves. He didn't know how she would end up. At this time, a burst of laughter came from outside. Yalu Hongji strode in and reached out to hug the other. I haven't seen you for a few days. The Empress has become prettier. Who knew that Xiao Guanyin dodged without a trace, and said bitterly, These days, the Emperor has been busy doting on the new Hui Fei. How could he have thought of me? As expected, Yalu Hongji's attention was diverted, and he hurriedly tried all kinds of explanations to comfort her. Song Qing-shu, who was in the inner room, was dumbfounded. No wonder they said that the Empress was doted on by everyone. It was not a lie. After a while, Yalu Hongji couldn't resist and wanted to hug her again. Xiao Guanyin diverted his attention again. Why did the Emperor suddenly come this time? Song Qing-shu, who was hiding in the shadows, was amazed. Ever since Yalu Hongji came in, he had wanted to hug Xiao Guanyin several times. But the Empress had always dodged without a trace and didn't let him touch her body. It really didn't seem like a loving couple. Could it be that this is the so-called selling one's skills, but not one's body? A thought popped into Song Qing-shu's mind, but he quickly laughed. Everyone in the imperial palace knew that the Empress was the most favored. Were they all idiots? What's more, the Empress had even given birth to a prince and was appointed as the crown prince. It's most likely a means of resisting while welcoming. Song Qing-shu concluded. At this time, Yalu Hongji also spoke from outside. We plan to invite the southern courtyard's king, Xiaofeng, and his women to a banquet. When they return to your place, we came to inform you in advance. Song Qing-shu's heart tightened. Xiaomin's analysis that Yalu Hongji was about to make a move on Xiaofeng was indeed correct. Is the emperor planning to make a move on Xiao Guanya? At this time, Xiao Guanyin also asked. As the mistress of the harem, she was deeply favored and trusted by the emperor, so she could roughly guess his thoughts. Xiaofeng doesn't know what's good for him. In addition, he's disloyal. He can't be left alive. Yalu Hongji recalled Xiaofeng's previous refusal to go to battle and was still somewhat angry. In the inner room, Song Qing-shu secretly shook his head. A simple misunderstanding could cause Xiaofeng to destroy himself. It would have been better if they had just talked things out. Unfortunately, these politicians were all cautious and suspicious people. No one would be stupid enough to lay everything out, and even if they did, most people wouldn't believe them. Instead, it would make the other side more cautious. So almost everyone would choose to make the first move to gain the upper hand. But Xiao Guanya's martial arts are unparalleled. Isn't it too risky to invite him here to make a move? Xiao Guanyin couldn't help but say worriedly. It was clear that Xiaofeng's reputation in Liao was well known by everyone, from the common people to the empress. Don't worry, we have prepared this for him. Yalu Hongji took out a small porcelain bottle and shook it. He said proudly, this medicine can make him unable to use any of his martial arts. At that time, the fierce tiger of the past is not even comparable to a sick cat. Only then did Xiao Guanyin exclaim, Your Majesty really has a divine plan. In the inner room, Song Qing-shu secretly nodded. In the original work, Yalu Hongji used a trick to make Zi give Xiaofeng this medicine, causing Xiaofeng to feel as if his heart was being pierced by thousands of needles. He couldn't summon any qi at all and was then thrown into prison. Now it seemed that although the plot had somewhat collapsed because of his interference, some events had amazing corrective power. Next, the two people outside began to arrange the details of the banquet later and discuss the filing of some unexpected situations. Song Qing-shu listened until he was bored to death. He simply lay down on the empress's bed and closed his eyes to rest. He wasn't the real Zhao Wei. Of course, he wouldn't tremble with fear like the other actors. After a while, the eunuch outside announced that the king of the southern courtyard had arrived. Song Qing-shu then got up and quietly looked outside through the gap. Xiaofeng still walked like a dragon or a tiger, exuding a fierce aura. Song Qing-shu secretly gave him a thumbs up. There weren't many people in the world with such spirit. The girl in red beside him had snow-white skin, smooth and crystal clear. Her figure was petite and exquisite. Although she wasn't as charming as the empress, she had a trace of a girl's unique charm. Song Qing-shu naturally recognized that she was Azu. He was a little curious and didn't know how Zi was doing now. Zi was sent by him to be a spy by Xiao Feng's side. Unfortunately, there was no chance for her to be of use. Your subject, commoner, greets your majesty. Long live your majesty. Long live your majesty the empress. Xiao Feng and Azu respectfully saluted. There are no outsiders here. Sworn brother, there is no need to be so formal. Yelu Hongji and Xiao Guanyin hurriedly stood up. One supported Xiao Feng, while the other supported Azu. Song Qing-shu, who was inside the room, was full of admiration. If he didn't know that Yelu Hongji was going to make a move on Xiao Feng, how could he have seen any clues from Yelu Hongji's current performance? This must be the lady Azu that Sworn Brother mentioned before. As expected, I feel pity for you. You and Sworn Brother are a perfect match. Yelu Hongji looked at Azu and said with a smile. Xiao Feng hurriedly pulled a Zhu forward and introduced her. As a Zhu returned the greeting, she curiously glanced at Xiao Guanyin. Just now, when the other party helped her up, she faintly felt that the other party's face was a little strange, but for a while, she couldn't tell what was strange about it. Soon, the dishes and wine were served by the palace maids. Yelu Hongji raised his cup and said, Worthy little brother and Lady Azu have gone through untold hardships to finally be together. We will take this opportunity to bestow a marriage. Tomorrow, we will announce to the world that Lady Azu will be the southern courtyard princess and will be rewarded with 10,000 taels of gold. Xiao Feng was overjoyed. Many thanks to your majesty. He was not happy because of the rewards, but because of the marriage bestowed by the emperor. This honor was something that all women in the world yearned for, even in their dreams. To be able to have a Zhu marry him in a grand manner, he was happier than anything else. Worthy little brother need not be so polite. Yelu Hongji raised his cup and said meaningfully, Come, let us drink this wine together and bless the two newlyweds in advance. Chapter 1552. Song Qing-shu hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he didn't stop Xiao Feng from drinking. After all, he wasn't a good person without principles. There were many things he needed to consider. He needed to be responsible for his women and subordinates, taking care of their interests. Of course, the main reason was that he knew that this poisonous wine wasn't the kind that would kill upon contact with blood. It only temporarily sealed Xiao Feng's cultivation. If Yelu Hongji really wanted Xiao Feng's life, he would still stop him. Xiao Feng and Azu were overjoyed at the news of their marriage. So how could they have any reservations? Raising their cups, they downed the wine. Both sides chatted for a while. The smile on Yelu Hongji's face became more and more playful. Xiao Feng was feeling strange, but suddenly he felt as if thousands of needles were stabbing his heart. His face paled, staring at Yelu Hongji. Why? The smile on Yelu Hongji's face disappeared. He harumphed coldly. We ordered you to capture Yelu Qi and Xiao Ban, his clansmen who betrayed us. Yet our best cavalry couldn't even catch up to them. Do you think we're 3 years old? The other side is cunning. I have already reported the details to your majesty. Xiao Feng endured the pain in his body and hurriedly explained. If he was alone today, it wouldn't be a big deal, but with Azu by his side, he could only try his best to clear his name, even though he knew the chances were slim. Yelu Hongji obviously didn't want to continue this topic. Changing the topic, we received a secret report saying that you have a close relationship with Golden Snake Camp's leader, Song Qing-shu. You even received a life-saving grace from him. And this time, Yelu Qi and the others just happened to be under Golden Snake Camp. Tell me, how can there be such a coincidence in this world? This official indeed has a good relationship with Song Qing-shu, but public and private matters are private matters. How can this official be the kind of person who can't distinguish between public and private matters? Xiao Feng didn't think that Yelu Hongji would misunderstand him so deeply. You can't distinguish between public and private matters? Yelu Hongji sneered. It's not like we didn't give you a chance to lead an army against Golden Snake Camp. But how did you answer me? Xiao Feng's face paled, trying to explain. Unfortunately, Yelu Hongji wasn't going to give him the chance. Yelu Hongji waved his hand. Guards, the southern courtyard's King Xiao Feng is rebelling against his superiors. throw him into the heavenly prison. The imperial bodyguards, who had been waiting outside for a long time, rushed in and took Xiao Feng away. At this moment, Xiao Feng felt as if his insides were being pierced by knives and needles. How could he summon any strength to resist? After Xiao Feng was brought down, Xiao Guanyin, who was at the side, said with a smile, "Congratulations to your majesty for using a little trick to capture the unparalleled King Xiao. Ha! No matter how powerful a subject is, he can't escape from this emperor's palm." Yilu Hongji was very pleased with himself. Xiao Guanyin glanced at Azu, who was lying on the ground. "Your majesty, how should we deal with this Miss Azu? Do you want to stay in the palace?" In the inner room, Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. The empress really had the heart of a snake and scorpion. No wonder the people in the palace talked about her with respect and fear. If Yilu Hongji really reached out his claws to Azu, should he save her? If something happened that Xiao Feng would regret for the rest of his life, it was really, fortunately, Yilu Hongji shook his head. "Forget it. Xiao Feng has done me a great favor. Guards, bring Miss Azu back to the southern courtyard's king residence. At the same time, seal off the entire residence. Without this emperor's orders, no one is allowed to enter or leave." In fact, if Azu wasn't Xiao Feng's woman, with her beauty, Yilu Hongji would be interested in taking her into his harem and have some fun with her. However, Xiao Feng's prestige in Liao had always been high. This time, Yilu Hongji imprisoned him for no reason was enough to cause panic among the people. If he took in his woman as well, who knew what kind of turmoil it would cause? Although Yilu Hongji was lustful, as the emperor, he still knew what was important. He wouldn't cause unrest in the court for a woman. This allowed Song Qingshu, who was hiding in the dark, to heave a sigh of relief. Otherwise, it would really be a headache. Although Xiao Feng has been captured, he has been the king of the southern courtyard for all these years. He does have some confidence. If we don't control them and they are incited to rescue Xiao Feng, it might cause unrest in the capital. This emperor must immediately arrange these matters. After Azu was taken away, Yilu Hongji also stood up, putting national affairs first. "Your majesty is truly a saint. How can this concubine be like dodgy Mimi? I respectfully send your majesty off." Xiao Guanyin also followed suit and bowed. "The empress is indeed a virtuous empress." Haha, Yilu Hongji was already happy that he had settled Xiao Feng today. After being flattered by Xiao Guanyin, he was even more pleased. Xiao Guanyin respectfully sent him off with a smile. After disappearing outside the palace with Yilu Hongji, her expression instantly calmed down. With an indifferent expression, she ordered the palace maids and eunuchs. "All of you go out. Without this empress's orders, no one is allowed to enter." After these people filed out, Xiao Guanyin then lifted the curtain and walked into the inner room. Song Qingshu had already been standing at the side, waiting for a long time. Xiao Guanyin was originally very satisfied with his attitude, but her gaze suddenly fell on the messy bed, and her expression couldn't help but change. "How dare you? You even dare to climb this empress's bed?" Song Qingshu cursed inwardly. Just now, he was only concerned with eavesdropping on the situation outside and forgot to tidy up the bed. He could only explain. Just now, this subordinate was too flustered and accidentally tripped over a stool and fell on your majesty's bed. This subordinate hopes that your majesty will forgive me. Xiao Guanyin frowned, but in the end, she reluctantly acknowledged his words. She directly sat down at the table and coldly said, "Continue to answer the question just now." Song Qingshu then remembered that she was asking about himself. "I don't know what specific aspect does your majesty want to know." Xiao Guanyin rested her chin on her hand, revealing half of her white wrist, which was really as smooth as jade. "If I ask about those princesses, you probably haven't seen them before. It's useless to ask." "Well, then tell me about him going to the sky to pray for rain. It is said that everyone in Lin and witnessed it with their own eyes that day. Don't tell me you don't know." "Of course I know this." Song Qingshu had no choice but to describe the scene of that day. Initially, he had intended to be humble, but after thinking about it, He realized that he was now using Zhao Wei's identity, so he was not boasting about himself. It would be a waste of such a good opportunity if he did not boast about himself. Ahem, with a plan in mind, Song Qingshu really described the incident of him praying for rain in Lin, and as if he was an immortal descending to earth. After he finished talking, even he was a little impressed. If he wrote an essay in his previous life, it would be a perfect score. As expected, Xiao Guanin's beautiful eyes were full of brilliance as she listened. In some moments, she could even see stars in her eyes. Song Qingshu couldn't help but be stunned. Was his charm so great that the queen of a country thousands of miles away had become his little fan? A real man should live like this. After all, Song Qingshu was a person who experienced it personally. The details described were much richer than the information Xiao Guanin received. Xiao Guanin really praised him after listening to it. Song Qingshu secretly laughed, thinking that there should be some reward or something like that. Who knew that Xiao Guanin's face suddenly changed, and her voice became as cold as ice. Your mission is completed. You can die now. Chapter 1553. Xiao Guanin's voice had just fallen when she lightly flicked her finger. The ornamental finger glove instantly shot out and shot towards the space between Song Qingshu's eyebrows. Due to the stimulation of internal energy, the usually beautiful ornament had now become the most frightening weapon. Song Qingshu hurriedly tilted his head. The finger glove shot into a pillar at the side and instantly sank into the pillar. Seeing this, he secretly clicked his tongue. If it had shot into a person's head, that person would not have survived. Xiao Guanin did not expect her sure kill attack to be dodged by the opponent. Who are you? I should be asking her ladyship this question. Song Qingshu understood that an empress would not have such profound martial arts. It was really strange everywhere. Unfortunately, before he finished speaking, Xiao Guanin waved her hand and attacked. She originally did not expect an answer when she asked. She only wanted to distract the opponent. However, with Song Qingshu's rich experience, this kind of small trick naturally could not be hidden from him. Moreover, with his current level of cultivation, letting the opponent make the first move did not affect him at all. Originally, he could very quickly capture the opponent, but in order to investigate the opponent's identity, he had been using martial arts that were about the same level as her. He planned to take the opportunity to understand her martial arts. As expected, after continuously attacking for more than 20 moves without any effect, Xiao Guanin finally could not hold back anymore. Her hands suddenly became incomparably soft, her martial arts completely different from before. Bone-melting soft palm. Song Qingshu recognized the martial arts used by the opponent and was momentarily shocked. However, Xiao Guanin's shock was even greater than his. Who are you? How do you recognize this martial arts? Song Qingshu also looked at her strangely. Who are you, her ladyship? How do you know the martial arts of Divine Dragon Island? Xiao Guanin did not continue attacking because after dozens of moves, she had already understood that the opponent's martial arts were far above hers. Previously, she was only trying to test her sex martial arts. She very naturally lay down on the couch at the side, intentionally or unintentionally showing off her exaggerated and graceful curves, especially her thin waist and perky buttocks. It made her exude an endless sense of femininity. She didn't answer Song Qingshu's question. Instead, she tucked her messy hair behind her ear, and her voice regained its previous alluring tone. Do you think I'm pretty? Song Qingshu subconsciously looked over. Under the illumination of the candlelight, every inch of her skin was exuding endless temptation, especially the ecstasy in her voice. It simply made one want to pounce on her, press her under his body, and ruthlessly ravage her. Oh, she is quite beautiful. Song Qingshu told the truth. Although this woman was full of danger, she was also full of temptation. And it was precisely because of that danger that made her temptation even more irresistible. However, Song Qingshu's heart suddenly trembled, because he suddenly discovered that the other party's eyes suddenly emitted a strange light, and the expression in his eyes became increasingly strange. I actually met a kindred spirit. Song Qing-shu naturally recognized that she was using something similar to the soul transfer grand technique. He sneered in his heart and used the soul transfer grand technique to counterattack. Even though he was quite familiar with the bewitching art, how could it compare to the vastness of the 9 manual's soul-shifting art? What's more, even if the cultivation technique was the same, the power of the person using it would be as different as heaven and earth. The two of them cast spells at the same time. How could the light of a firefly compete with the brilliance of the sun and moon? Xiao Guanyin let out a cry and immediately fell onto the bed. Even though her face was flushed, her eyes were filled with fear. Who exactly are you? Her bewitching art had always been successful. It could make men become her slaves, but there were advantages and disadvantages. Even though she could use it to enslave men, if she failed and suffered a backlash, she would become someone else's slave. Whether it was life or death, it would all be in the hands of others. This time, it was obvious that she had failed. Song Qing-shu walked over and looked down at Xiao Guanyin, who was lying on the bed. Now you have no right to ask me. I should be the one asking you. Who exactly are you? Even though he had a vague guess in his heart, this woman's appearance was very different from what he remembered. I am. Because of the bewitching art's backlash, Xiao Guanyin was already considered to be a slave to a certain extent. When she heard Song Qing-shu's question, she subconsciously wanted to answer, but her rationality made her resist this impulse. Not going to say. Song Qing-shu snorted coldly. Just as he was about to cast the soul transfer grand technique again, Xiao Guanyin suddenly spoke softly and weakly. Qing-shu, is that you? Song Qing-shu was stunned, and a thought flashed through his mind. Su Quan, it's really you? Xiao Guanyin suddenly sat up and looked at him happily. She had only asked tentatively and didn't expect to get an unexpected surprise. Your face? Song Qing-shu reached out to touch the skin on Xiao Guanyin's face and couldn't help but be moved. Although it was smooth and moving, he was good at disguising and could naturally distinguish the subtle difference between real skin and a mask. Xiao Guanyin smiled and reached out to remove the mask on her face, revealing a beautiful and charming face. Her face was flushed and her eyes were watery, full of charm. Song Qing-shu was overjoyed and also tore off the mask on his face, and the two hugged each other excitedly. How did you become Empress Liao? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but ask curiously. It's a long story. Back then in Shengjing, I met my father, who is now the great Liao Northern Mansion's prime minister, Xiao Pity. Su Quan explained. How did Xiao Pity become your father? Song Qing-shu asked in surprise. Su Quan replied. In the early years, Xiao Pity wasn't the prime minister of the Northern Mansion yet. At that time, he wandered in the Han Dynasty, took the name Su-yin, and met my mother. Later, Liao's country almost perished. He returned to the country and helped Liao to stand firm and gradually rose to the prime minister of the Northern Mansion. At the same time, he was also in charge of the Great Secret Bureau. Your father's identity is really colorful. Thinking of their previous interactions, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but click his tongue. Because the position of Empress Liao is empty, my father called me back to participate in the Empress election. I thought whether it was the 9th princess, Xia Qingqing, or sect leader Zhou, the women around you all have a lot of power behind them to help your great cause. Although I have Divine Dragon Island, it's difficult for my influence to reach the Central Plains, so I want to take this opportunity to help you. Su Quan explained softly. Because my identity is too sensitive, I was worried that the information I sent would be exposed on the road, so I didn't dare to tell you the truth. I could only ask you to come to Liao as soon as possible. I see. Song Qing-shu finally understood why there were so few letters from her before, and each time she was vague. These 2 years have been really hard on you, but am I actually the kind of person who relies on sacrificing his own women to achieve success? Su Quan smiled sweetly. I know what you're worried about. Don't worry, I haven't let Yelu Hongji touch my body these days. Chapter 1554. Being Seen Through. Song Qingshu couldn't help but smile sheepishly. How did you do it? Of course, it's the immortal music's soul manipulation. Su Quan pursed her lips into a smile, proudly raising her jade-like chin. Although it's not as good as your soul-shifting technique, it's enough to deal with a mere Yelu Hongji. Yelu Hongji, is that stupid? Song Qingshu curiously asked. Although Yelu Hongji was famous for being a fatuous ruler in history, the way he dealt with Xiaofeng was quite clever. That's why I also used the fragrance of the leopard umbrella magic mushroom to make him fall into a kind of blissful dream every time he comes here. The happiness brought to him by others is never as great as the happiness he brings to himself. That's why every time he comes to my place, he's satisfied and even more trusting of me. Su Quan opened a small hidden box on the dresser, took out a yellow and white striped mushroom, and handed it over. Leopard umbrella magic mushroom? Song Qingshu thought of the sweet fragrance he smelled when he first entered the room and couldn't help but slowly nod. After Su Quan's explanation, he also understood the origin of this mushroom. This mushroom grew on Divine Dragon Island, and because of the yellowish-brown stripes on its surface that resembled leopard patterns, coupled with its hallucinogenic properties, it got its name. Thinking about how every time Yelu Hongji came here, he would have that kind of dream, and what kind of game, Song Qingshu silently mourned for him. It was really unfortunate that he met this which Su Quan, a dignified ruler of a country, was played in the palm of her hand. But I heard that you gave birth to a son for Yelu Hongji, and that he made him the crown prince? Song Qingshu suddenly thought of another question, and couldn't help but frown slightly. That's a child I found in a farmer's house. Because I already have Yelu Hongji under control, as long as I deal with the related eunuchs and nannies, it's not a difficult matter. Su Quan calmly narrated. Song Qingshu understood that behind this tranquility, there was no telling how much blood of eunuchs and old mama had been spilled. However, thinking that she came from Shun Long Jiao, who killed people without batting an eye, it was hard to blame her for this kind of matter. On the other hand, Song Qingshu was also full of admiration. He knew that when he impersonated Kangxi, he risked his life. He did not expect Su Quan to imitate him and actually did a good job on the outside. Although because she needed Yelu Hongji's power, she could not replace Kangxi like he did. But she, a weak woman, was able to do this in the palace. It was enough to prove her intelligence. Seeing that Song Qingshu kept silent, Su Quan suddenly panicked. Qingshu, do you not believe me? That's really not my child. If you don't believe me, you can try. How do I test this? Song Qingshu laughed involuntarily. This was not the future. There was no DNA testing technology. There was only blood test, which was completely unreliable. Su Quan's face was pink. She gently unbuttoned her clothes and pulled it down. Biting her lips, she said, "Now that crown prince is only a few months old. If I gave birth to him, I haven't weaned yet. You could try it yourself." Her voice had always been charming and moving. Otherwise, she would not have been able to cultivate something like the celestial sound soul assimilation technique, which was similar to the great soul shifting technique. Now that she was speaking in such a tender and sweet manner, it was even sweeter and cloying. Song Qingshu's heart swayed when he heard it. "I'll try it." Song Qingshu's throat was a little dry. They had been separated for a long time. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Especially since Su Quan was already very charming, he directly pounced on her and pressed her down on the bed. The two of them fooled around on the dragon bed. Just as the boat was about to enter the alley, they suddenly heard the sound of His Majesty has arrived. The two of them hurriedly got up and tidied up their messy clothes. Damn it! Why did he come back at such a critical time? Su Quan's face was like a peach blossom. As she buttoned up her clothes, she couldn't help but sigh. Her watery eyes almost dripped water. Should I hide for a while? Song Qingshu was also in a bad mood. He was intimate with his own woman, but in the end, he looked like an adulterer who had been caught. It was really depressing. Don't panic. Stand behind the screen. I'll quickly take care of the trouble. Su Quan put on the fake leather mask again and tidied up her somewhat messy hair. After making sure there were no major flaws, she hurriedly got up and went out. Just at this time, Yalu Hongji walked in with large strides. He said with a smile, "Empress, as soon as I finished dealing with the remnants of Xiao Feng's party, I rushed here without stopping. Are you surprised? Are you surprised?" Song Qing-shu, who was hiding in the shadows, spat without any malice. "Humph! If you had rushed here a few steps earlier, you would have seen your empress rolling in the sheets with me. That would have been really surprising." Su Quan brushed aside a strand of hair hanging down and bowed gracefully. "Your Majesty is indeed swift and decisive. You finished such a large case so quickly. Wasn't it because I was in a hurry to see you?" Yalu Hongji found that Xiao Guanyin today seemed to be even more beautiful than usual. Her cheeks were red and her large watery eyes seemed to emit a silent temptation. Has the Empress already fallen asleep? Yalu Hongji noticed that her clothes were slightly wrinkled and her hair was slightly messy. However, he didn't think too much about it. At this time, a normal person would have already fallen asleep. In addition, Xiao Guanyin in this state had an even more touching charm. In this Chief thought that your Majesty was going to spend the night in the imperial study, so I went to sleep first. Now that my clothes are disheveled, I hope your Majesty will forgive me." Su Quan blinked her large eyes. Her tone was full of touching charm. "Haha, it's fine. Zhen likes the Empress's disheveled appearance," Yalu Hongji said as he reached out to hug her. However, Su Quan's small waist twisted and she dodged without a trace. "This chia will help your Majesty undress." Good, Yalu Hongji laughed and nodded. He couldn't wait to open his arms. Su Quan first went to the side and lit a stick of incense. Song Qingshu's eyes were sharp, and he recognized that it was sandalwood mixed with the powder of the leopard umbrella illusion mushroom. Originally, he could have taken care of Yalu Hongji faster. However, he also wanted to see how Su Quan usually dealt with Yalu Hongji. Therefore, he was happy to watch from the side. Still not done. Seeing that she didn't move for a long time, Yalu Hongji couldn't help but feel dissatisfied. I'm coming. Your Majesty, don't be in such a hurry. This chia needs to prepare." Su Quan acted like a spoiled child. Even Song Qing-shu, who was in the dark, felt his heart flutter. Her voice right now was sweet and coquettish. To put it bluntly, it was coquettish and seductive. Which man wouldn't be moved? Good. Empress, whatever you say. Yalu Hongji really started to be attracted to her. "Your Majesty, do you think I'm beautiful today?" Su Quan asked coyly. Yalu Hongji hurriedly nodded his head. Beautiful. All the women in the world can't compare to the Empress. Even the new Hui Fei can't compare to this Chia, Su Quan said as her sleeve brushed his cheek. At first, Yalu Hongji was still a bit hesitant. However, when he smelled the special fragrance on her sleeve, his eyes became misty. "Of course not." Su Quan smiled sweetly. "How about this Chia dance for your Majesty? Why are you still dancing at a time like this? Let's just do it." Yalu Hongji impatiently closed his arms and wanted to hug her. Unfortunately, Su Quan's martial arts were high. How could you let him hug her? She lightly moved a few feet away. "This Chia will dance while taking off my clothes." Yalu Hongji swallowed his saliva. He almost had a nosebleed. "Then Zhen will enjoy it." Chapter 1555. Looking at Yalu Hongji's lecherous behavior, Song Qing-shu was displeased. He even had the urge to jump out and teach him a lesson. Fortunately, Su Quan didn't make him wait too long. The poison of the leopard umbrella mushroom had already begun to take effect. She unknowingly used the celestial melody spell, and Yalu Hongji's clear eyes gradually became blank. "You're already very happy. Now that you're happy, you're very tired. You should sleep." Su Quan paced around Yalu Hongji, the fragrance of the mushroom on her sleeves brushing against his face. Yalu Hongji's body swayed, and he finally fell asleep on the ground. After sealing his sleeping acupoint, Su Quan happily said to Song Qing-shu, "It's done. Qing-shu, you can come out now." When Song Qing-shu came out, he also praised, "You used medicine and the celestial melody spell. It's really ingenious. It can't be helped." Su Quan pursed her lips and smiled. If I could directly transfer my soul to another person like you, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Song Qingshu laughed and hugged her slender waist. It's already very impressive that you can do this alone. Su Quan took off the mask on her face, revealing her originally beautiful face. She pursed her lips and looked at him seductively. Do you want to continue? Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Of course, continue. I haven't finished checking just now. He hugged her and rolled onto the bed. After a while, Su Quan's cheeks blushed and she pouted coquettishly. Now you know that I'm not lying, right? Song Qingshu reluctantly raised his head from between her breasts and purposely said with a straight face, I've only checked one side. I haven't checked the other. Scoundrel, Su Quan pouted, but she didn't seem to be angry at all. However, when Song Qingshu wanted to continue, he was stopped by her slender hand. Just as he was feeling puzzled, he heard Su Quan's soft voice. Wait a minute. Song Qingshu was naturally not the kind of reckless man who did not know how to flirt. He was also very curious about what she was going to do, who knew that she would pick up the mask from before again. After fiddling with it for a while, she returned to the appearance of Xiao Guanyin. Who are you? How dare you be so rude to me? At this moment, Xiao Guanyin's phoenix-like eyes were filled with fear. She wanted to push away the man on top of her. Song Qingshu was startled, but when he noticed the slyness in her eyes, he instantly understood what she was playing at. He was naturally happy to cooperate with her. The emperor is addicted to wine and women. He has a beautiful woman like Nyang Nyang and recently took in a new concubine. He did something wrong to Nyang Nyang. Can't Nyang Nyang take revenge? Xiao Guanyin was also startled. Clearly, she didn't expect Song Qingshu to enter into the scene so quickly. However, she reacted quickly and quickly revealed a hesitant and struggling expression. He is the emperor. Naturally, he can take in whoever he wants. How can I compare? No, I can't let his majesty down. Seeing that she was struggling to leave, Song Qingshu held her down. Nyang Nyang, why do you need to deceive yourself? In fact, you know better than anyone else. Look, your body's reaction can't lie to anyone. Because they have been hiding in the palace all year round, they needed to deal with all kinds of people and resolve all kinds of dangerous situations. As a result, the two of them had superb acting skills. In a moment of impulse, the two of them really got into character. It was as if one was really the lonely Empress Xiao Guanyin in the palace, and the other was a handsome and demonic, mysterious young master. Your Majesty, quickly save this concubine. This concubine doesn't want to. Suddenly, Xiao Guanyin finally released her big move. She stretched out her hand, trying to find the unconscious Yalu Hongji to ask for help to save her, who was about to be pulled into the abyss. Seeing this scene, Song Qingshu's heart beat twice as fast as usual. What a demon! After the clouds dispersed and the rain stopped, Xiao Guanyin's whole body curled up in Song Qingshu's embrace. Her face was also tightly pressed against his chest. Her slender fingers lightly drew circles on it. Her fingernails, painted with balsam juice, looked even more red and moving under the candlelight. Qingshu, do you really think I am Xiao Guanyin? You don't feel any pain when you use me. This short sentence, coupled with her seductive expression, almost caused Song Qingshu to turn over and press down on her again. Sometimes, he had to admit that some women were really seductive to the bone. Every word and action, even one look, could make you feel endless pleasure. Are you not Xiao Guanyin? Song Qingshu reached out and brushed his hand over her beautiful brows, unable to help but tease. Su Quan was startled, then immediately smiled. Yes, in a sense, I am indeed Xiao Guanyin. Xiao Guanyin is me. These days, I have heard every day that there is an unparalleled beauty in the palace who spoils 3 palaces. I have always been curious about what kind of person Xiao Guanyin is. I didn't expect it to be you. Song Qingshu said with emotion. Su Quan also sighed softly. These days, I have been thinking about the day when I reunite with you, but I didn't expect it to come so dramatically. Everything was so surprising that I thought I was in a dream. Song Qingshu smiled gratefully and reached out to pinch her. So this is the scene in your dream. Su Quan trembled from his pinch, and hurriedly begged for mercy. Song Qing-shu, don't pinch there. The two of them cuddled for a while. Then Su Quan remembered the serious matter. By the way, Song Qing-shu, how did you suddenly become Zhao Wei? It's a long story. Song Qing-shu told her about how he came to destroy the Liao Song alliance and investigate Murong Jingyue. Then he mentioned that he had a vague feeling that Murong Jingyue was hiding in Yelu Isen's mansion. Maybe he was Yelu Isen, so he sneaked into King Wei's mansion. He didn't expect to be sent to the palace by a freak combination of factors. Yelu Isen has indeed risen quickly these years. Su Quan recalled the changes in the court over the years and couldn't help but nod secretly. By the way, the reason why Yelu Isen sent Zhao Wei here this time seems to be to get close to you. Song Qing-shu suddenly thought of the task he had received before and hurriedly reminded her, I don't know what they are planning. It's most likely for my father. Su Quan snorted. The real privy envoy Yelu Rinxian has been in the northwest for a long time, far away from the capital. Now that the king of the south courtyard, Xiao Feng, has fallen, only my father, who is the prime minister of the North Mansion, will be a stumbling block for Yelu Isen. He must want to overthrow my father through me. I see. Song Qing-shu finally understood. Then you have to be careful. Don't worry. I know his purpose now. Even you, a chess piece, have betrayed him. What kind of storm can he stir up? Su Quan hooked her arms around his neck and said with a smile, That's true. Song Qing-shu also relaxed. The two of them fought fiercely all night and soon fell asleep while chatting. When they woke up the next day, Song Qing-shu was wearing his clothes and feeling depressed. I'm with my woman, but I have to sneak away in advance. It's really depressing. Su Quan comforted him with a smile. Oh, bear with it. I'll think a way to solve this problem as soon as possible. Okay. Only then did Song Qing-shu reluctantly leave the Empress Palace. He wondered how Shun Bijuan had been last night since he had suddenly disappeared, so he went to her palace to take a look. Who is it? As soon as Song Qing-shu entered her bedroom, he was discovered. Chapter 1556. Song Qing-shu was also stunned. After all, with his current martial arts skills, it was almost impossible for him to be discovered. He hurriedly looked over and saw that it was Shun Bijuan looking at him nervously. It's you. Shun Bijuan finally let out a sigh of relief when she recognized Zhao Wei. Why aren't you asleep yet? Song Qing-shu closed the window and asked as he walked in. I'm scared, so I can't sleep. Shun Bijuan couldn't help but look a little embarrassed. You're afraid that Yelu Hongji will break in, so you've been watching the door? Song Qing-shu immediately felt relieved, thinking that it was no wonder that she had discovered him. Although his qinggong was excellent and could be almost silent, he could not be invisible. She had been watching the door and windows, so how could he hide the slightest movement from her? Yeah, Shun Bijuan smiled a little embarrassedly. Song Qing-shu was also speechless. So what if you're watching the door? If Yelu Hongji wants to break in, do you think you can stop him? Actually, Shun Bijuan hesitated and finally murmured, Actually, I was waiting for you. Waiting for me? Song Qing-shu was stunned. Seeing the picturesque girl looking at him like this, a man's vanity was greatly satisfied. However, he also understood that this was just Shun Bijuan grasping at straws when she had nowhere else to go. She might not have any other intentions towards him. Shun Bijuan blushed and nodded. She had never expected that she would say something like that to a man. It had completely toppled her decades of upbringing as a lady from a wealthy family. However, when she thought about it, he had already gone to the service room. From a certain point of view, he was no longer a man, so it wasn't rude. Now that I'm back, you should take this opportunity to have a good rest. Song Qing-shu didn't know that in the girl's heart, he was now a best friend, or else he would have jumped in anger. Okay, Shun Bijuan bit her lip, her beautiful face full of exhaustion. She had been too afraid to sleep before, but now that this man was by her side, she suddenly felt her heart calm down and quickly fell asleep. This sleep was exceptionally sweet. When Shun Bijuan woke up, she found that the other person was standing in front of the window, examining the distant palace. His back was exceptionally tall and sturdy. There wasn't the slightest bit of the feminine air of a palace eunuch. It was clearly a peerless hero standing there. Shinbijuan shook her head, dispelling the unrealistic and absurd thoughts in her mind. Hearing the noise, Song Qingshu turned around. "You're awake?" Shinbijuan sat up and shyly tucked her messy hair behind her ear. She thought about how she had gotten used to having a man in her room while she slept. In the past, it was inconceivable. "Don't worry, Yalu Hongji won't have time to deal with you these days. He still has to deal with the Southern Yard's king, Xiaofeng." Song Qingshu comforted, finally letting Shinbijuan understand that she was temporarily safe. After comforting Shinbijuan, Song Qingshu decided to go back to Su Quan's place to see if she had finished dealing with Yalu Hongji. By the time he arrived at the Empress Palace, Yalu Hongji had already left to attend court. Song Qingshu sneaked in. Su Quan was very surprised that he had returned. The two of them quickly got together and talked about what had happened since they were separated. "I heard that you became the son-in-law of the Kingdom of Song and married two princesses at the same time. I wonder how many men in the world worship you as an idol," Su Quan said with a faint smile. Song Qingshu was a little embarrassed. After all, he had used the identity of Zhao Wei to brag about himself. Now that the matter had been exposed, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. "Are those two princesses very beautiful? Are they as beautiful as me?" Su Quan came over and asked the same question again, a sly smile on her face. "They are indeed beautiful, but they are far from comparable to you." Song Qingshu was not lying. Zhao Huan, and Zhao Yuanyuan were not inferior to Su Quan in terms of appearance, but they were still young, after all. How could young and inexperienced girls compare to Su Quan's mature charm? You only know how to use these words to coax me." Despite what she said, the smile in her eyes revealed the happiness in Su Quan's heart. As the two of them were flirting, Palace Maid Shan, who had brought Song Qingshu here, suddenly asked to see him. It wasn't convenient for Song Qingshu to show himself, so he hid on the Emperor's bed. Su Quan went out to summon her. "Your Highness, this servant has recently obtained a poem written by Terry Jian of the Kingdom of Song. I have specially brought it to you." Palace Maid Shan knelt on the ground, holding a handwritten book in her hand. Song Qingshu, who was hiding in the room, paused for a moment before realizing that Terry Jian meant empress in the Liao language. "Oh, let me have a look." Because it was inconvenient for Su Quan to get news of Song Qingshu in the palace, she would intentionally or unintentionally ask palace maids and eunuchs about what happened in the south. After all, it was inconvenient for her to directly ask about Song Qingshu. This way, the palace maids would mistakenly think that she liked the culture of the southern dynasties, so they would compete to please her. Su Quan was happy to use this misunderstanding to cover up for herself and had no intention of clarifying. Palace Maid Shan came forward and handed the book over. "This is circulated outside the palace. It should be a handwritten book circulated among the common people. The handwriting isn't good. Your Highness, please don't be offended." Su Quan nodded. She obviously didn't care about this. She took it and opened it, only to see the words written on it. "Black hair 7 feet long, pulled up as inner makeup. Sleepless on the pillow, I feel the fragrance of green clouds. Red silk is strong, light as white jade. Try to open the chest, better than trembling and fragrant. The hibiscus loses its new beauty. The lotus flower loses its old makeup. Both are comparable, like the fragrance of pink cheeks. That foot is not. Long beard imitates the phoenix. Last night on my arm, the fragrance beside my neck. The soup tastes good, sending words out of the palace merchants. And Zhilong's mouth contains a warm, sweet fragrance. Not related to the smell of wine, not the fragrance of a lipstick, but when the flowers are unraveled, the fragrance is sent by the wind. Since plucking the rose, I also personally went to the imperial garden, returning hand in hand the fragrance of spring bamboo shoots. The phoenix boots fit perfectly. The stockings remove the light frost, who carved the warm white jade into the soft hook fragrance. Unraveling the belt, the palms become more and more busy. Inside the silk skirt, the soul has another fragrance. Coughing with 1,000 flowers wine, the skin is dressed like a lily. Nothing more than looking at the deep water, full of fragrance. The more Su Quan read, the more she blushed. She spat and said, "How could the empress of the southern dynasties write such obscene words and songs?" Palace maid Shan hurriedly explained, "Although it is somewhat decadent, I can see that the literary talent of the southern dynasties is not bad." "It is not bad." Su Quan nodded. At this time, Palace maid Shan suggested, "Now that the empress of the southern dynasties is writing lyrics, it is a pity that these manuscripts were copied by common people and are not worthy of the lyrics. Why don't your highness write one yourself?" And the two empresses of the north and south wrote it together. They can be said to be excellent in both poetry and calligraphy. "Stop flattering me," Su Quan scolded with a smile. "The empress of the southern dynasties wrote a good poem. How can Ben Gong copy it, and it can be called the same?" Palace maid Shan snickered and said, "Your highness can present the poem you wrote to the emperor. The emperor will definitely be pleased if he knows it is the work of the two empresses. Also, Consort Hui, who entered the palace these days, is extremely beautiful. Your highness, if you don't pay attention, the emperor's heart will be stolen by other women." Su Quan was finally moved. She wasn't thinking of pleasing Yelu Hongji, she was thinking of pleasing Song Qing-shu, who was in the inner room. Chapter 1557. "Serve me brush and ink." Su Quan finally became interested. Palace attendant Shan quickly finished sharpening the brush and ink. She raised the brush and wrote down the 10 fragrances courtyard CI. While she could not be considered a master of calligraphy, her words were still graceful and had a hint of heroism. There was also a hint of charm in the heroism. Palace attendant Shan praised loudly at the side. Su Quan had a sudden impulse. She did not put down the brush and wrote another poem. In the palace, only the Zhao family's dowry is counted. The rain and clouds mislead the king. Only the moon knows the truth. I once saw a swallow fly into the sun. Palace attendant Shan stilled and then reacted. Your Highness' literary talent is much better than that Terry Jian of the Southern Dynasty. The other's words are vulgar. Your Highness' words are clearly more elegant. There's no need for you to flatter this consort. In terms of literary talent, how could us Khitan people compare to those people from the Southern Dynasty? However, poetry is only a minor Dao. Fighting on the battlefield is what us Khitan people are good at. Su Quan smiled. As she looked at the poem she had written, a heroic figure appeared in her mind. Your Highness is right. Palace attendant Shan appeared to be enlightened. You can leave first. Su Quan clearly did not have the energy to waste with her here. She could not wait to return to Song Qingshu's embrace. Yes, Palace attendant Shan respectfully retreated. She had just left and closed the door when Su Quan impatiently took the poem she had written and leapt into the arms of Song Qingshu. "Song Lang, this is for you." "For me?" Song Qingshu took it and read it. Unfortunately, he was not a person of the literary world. After reading for a long time, he could not tell if it was good or bad. Speaking of which, I feel that the one written by the Empress of the Song Dynasty is more interesting. For men, the poem written by the Empress of the Southern Song Dynasty was more interesting. Su Quan immediately pouted. "This was written especially for you. Written especially for me." Song Qingshu picked up the poem and read it again. Unfortunately, he was still confused. Looking at his confused expression, Su Quan knew that he didn't understand. She could only explain for him. In the palace, there's only the Zhao family. There's the word Zhao, and there's also the only in this sentence and the one here. This poem hides your name. Song Qingshu said gloomily, "Zhao Wei is obviously not my name. Song Qingshu's name is too conspicuous. I don't dare to hide it directly in this poem. It's easy for others to see through it." Su Quan was equally depressed. "I don't care. Anyway, you're Zhao Wei now." All right. Zhao Wei will be Zhao Wei." Song Qingshu also understood that it was too risky to hide his real name here. If he was not careful, the situation that Su Quan had worked so hard to open up here would go down the drain. In the next few days, Song Qing-shu often protected Shin Bijuan during the day and went to find Su Quan in the middle of the night. It could be said that he lived like a god. On this day, Shin Bijuan was chatting with him. Suddenly, Song Qing-shu's expression changed. He gave Shin Bijuan a look and then stood up respectfully, as if he was a serious actor receiving instructions from his concubine. Shin Bijuan was stunned at first, but when she saw a large group of guards walking in, she suddenly understood. When she saw that the leader was actually Xiao 11th Lang, Shin Bijuan's expression changed. Thinking that the other party was coming for her, she subconsciously took a step back. "What do you want?" Xiao 11th Lang looked at her deeply. Obviously, he was still holding a grudge against the other party for rejecting him last time. However, in front of so many guards, it was naturally not convenient for him to show anything. He glanced at Shin Bijuan, then suddenly turned his eyes to Song Qing-shu. He waved his hand and said sternly, "Take him down." Song Qing-shu immediately froze. He had been standing to the side, planning to watch a melodramatic drama. Who knew that Xiao 11th Lang would actually turn his target to him? While he was still in a daze, the surrounding guards had already drawn their blades and surrounded him. Song Qing-shu was still able to remain calm, but Shin Bijuan's face had already turned pale. She subconsciously thought that her relationship with him had been exposed, but now he was her only hope. She hurriedly asked, "Xiao 11th Lang, what is the meaning of this?" Many of the guards present sized up the two of them in surprise. From her tone, it seemed that the relationship between the two of them was a bit unusual. However, everyone in the palace was shrewd, so no one said anything. "Reporting to Your Highness, Zhao Wei is involved in promiscuity in the harem, so he needs to be thrown into prison for investigation," Xiao 11th Lang explained. Promiscuity in the harem? Shin Bijuan's pretty face immediately flushed. She thought he was talking about her, and couldn't help but feel embarrassed and angry. Nonsense. Xiao 11th Lang saw her expression and knew she had misunderstood. He hesitated and then walked over to tell her in a low voice, "Someone reported that Zhao Wei has been going in and out of the Empress's palace recently." Ah! Shin Bijuan was instantly dumbfounded. She had never thought that Zhao Wei would have any relationship with the Empress. The two of them spoke softly, but how could it escape Song Qing-shu's eyes and ears? He was secretly shocked. How had his relationship with Su Quan been exposed? He knew very well that he had been very careful every time he went to her chambers and had never been discovered by anyone. With his martial arts, if he couldn't even be sure of this, he could buy a piece of tofu and kill himself. At this time, in the royal study, Yalu Hongji was looking with a dark expression at the poetry of Shixiang Court in his hand. He naturally recognized this was the Empress notebook. The ambiguous pink words in it were so eye-piercing. The more Yalu Hongji read, the angrier he became. He was so angry that he threw the paper in his hand to the ground and glared at Palace, Maid Shan, who was kneeling on the ground. "Speak, what is going on?" No man could bear the humiliation of being deceived. The more he doted on the Empress, the stronger this anger was. Palace Maid Shan knelt on the ground and trembled. "I dare not lie to your majesty. Yesterday, Zhao Wei said that Empress Ida ordered him to play the zither. At that time, the Empress made 10 pieces of Hui Xian courtyard and ordered Zhao Wei to play the zither. From morning to night, the Empress looked under the curtain and played the zither with Zhao Wei through the curtain. At night, she ordered the candles to be lit and Zhao Wei to take off his official robes. He wore a green scarf, a gold cloth, a narrow-sleeved purple gown, and black boots with beads." Hearing this, Yalu Hongji's eyes twitched. Clearly, thinking of his wife asking another man to take off her clothes in front of him, he felt as if there was a grassland on his head. Palace Maid Shan glanced at him quietly and continued. The Empress wore a purple and gold phoenix gown, an apricot and gold skirt, 100 treasure flower hairpin, and red phoenix flower boots. She ordered Zhao Wei to set up the inner tent again and play the people with her. She said it in such detail that even every detail was restored clearly. This made Yalu Hongji feel as if he was there, but no man would want this kind of feeling. Chapter 1558. Palace attendant Shan did not seem to know that Yelu Hongji was on the verge of exploding. She continued. The two of them drank with each other, drinking wine and playing the guqin until the courtyard drum was struck 3 times and the servants were ordered to leave the tent. I was on duty at the time and did not hear the sound of guqin or drinking, but laughter. Thus, this servant secretly eavesdropped from outside the tent. I heard the empress say, "I can make you my husband." Zhao Wei said in a low voice, "Your servant may be strong, but I am only a small snake. Naturally, I cannot defeat the Khan's real dragon." The empress said, "Although I am a small, fierce snake, I am better than a real lazy dragon." Like a child crying in his sleep. Yelu Hongji's old face almost turned green. It was as if Palace Maid Shan was describing a real erotic scene. Well, like a child crying in his sleep. It was obviously the sound a woman made when she was extremely happy. Especially the words really lazy dragon, little fierce snake, and so on. It almost made him go crazy. Palace Maid Shan continued to describe the scene of that day. The courtyard drum was struck for the 4th time. The empress ordered me to open the tent and said, "Zhao Wei is drunk and unconscious. Wake him up for me." I called him many times before he woke up, so he got up and said goodbye. The empress gave him a box of gold and silk. Zhao Wei thanked her and left. Drunk? Yelu Hongji gritted his teeth so hard it felt like they were about to shatter. His tone was incomparably cold. Palace attendant Shan continued. After that day, the empress missed him very much and wrote the 10 fragrances sigh for Zhao Wei. Zhao Wei showed off the poem of 10 fragrances in front of the red-crowned crane of the musical house, and the red-crowned crane snatched the poem away. Later, we went to the Prince of Wei in fear and asked him to pass the memorial on our behalf. Yelu Hongji glanced to the side, and Yelu Isin hurriedly said, "When I received the news, I knew that this was a serious matter, so I didn't dare to neglect it, so I reported it to the emperor." Yelu Isin paused, then took out a poem and handed it over. "Your Majesty, this poem was also improvised by Her Ladyship." Yelu Hongji took it and looked at it. In the palace, there is only Zhao Jia's dowry. Only a piece of the moon knows the truth. She once spied a swallow flying into the bright sun. Humph! The empress only likes to play around with the Han people all day long. Seeing that he didn't see anything, Yelu Isin had no choice but to point it out for him. Zhao Wei's name is hidden in these few lines of the poem. These words were like the straw that broke the camel's back. Yelu Hongji was completely driven mad. He slammed his hand on the teacup, not even caring that his hand was bleeding. Wasn't Zhao Wei castrated by the imperial household when he entered the palace? How could he still mess around in the harem? Although he was a fatuous ruler, he was not a fool. He quickly thought of the key point. At this time, Yelu Isin calmly replied, "According to my investigation, Zhao Wei was indeed sent to the honorific office when he entered the palace, but just as he was about to be castrated, Gao Changming came and took him away. Zhao Wei must have given him a lot of money, so Gao Changming protected him. Where is Gao Changming? Bring him to me." Yelu Hongji had always doted on the empress. At this moment, he even had a glimmer of hope that this was all a misunderstanding. Unfortunately, Yelu Isin shattered his fantasy. When I sent people to capture Gao Changming, I found that he had already committed suicide to escape punishment. The people in the honorific office can testify that he took Zhao Wei away. If Song Qing-shu was here, he would naturally know that the Gao Changming they were talking about was the eunuch who had brought him into the palace. At the same time, he was shocked at Yelu Isin's ruthlessness. After all, from the conversation with eunuch Gao, he should also be Yelu Isin's man. He did not expect that he would end up being an abandoned pawn. Yelu Hongji finally erupted. "Flog Gao Changming's corpse, grind his bones into ashes. The people on duty in the honorific office who neglected their duties that day will all be executed as a warning to others. Send people to capture Zhao Wei. I want him to be executed by 1,000 cuts. As for Empress Xiao Guanyin, throw her into prison and interrogate by the privy envoy of the North Courtyard, Yelu Isin, and the privy envoy of the North Courtyard, Zhang Xiaojie. In addition, temporarily removed the Prime Minister of the North Residence, Xiao Pity, from his official position. The people of the Xiao family are not allowed to leave the residence without my permission, or they will be killed. Yes, your majesty. Yalu Isin bowed his head and accepted the decree, the corners of his mouth curling up slightly. Everything was developing according to his plan, even more smoothly than he had planned. After all, he did not expect Zhao Wei to gain the trust of the Empress so quickly. Now that the privy envoy of the North Courtyard, Yalu Rinxian, was old and far away at the border, the king of the South Courtyard, Xiao Feng, had fallen from power, and the Prime Minister of the North Residence, Xiao Pity, was probably going to be exterminated because of his daughter, Xiao Guanin's case. The entire Liao could be said to be under his control, so how could Yalu Isin not be proud? The only thing he needed to do now was to silence Zhao Wei to prevent him from revealing his relationship with him. Moreover, Zhang Xiaojie, who was handling the case with him, was one of his own, so it was easy to make the case an ironclad one. Back in Shun Bijuan's palace, Song Qing-shu still hadn't reacted to this sudden crisis. He was hesitating on whether he should allow them to take him away or resist and escape. After all, different choices meant different plans for the future. However, he was suddenly alarmed. It turned out that one of the guards had suddenly stabbed him in the back with a knife. This time, there was no need to make a choice. Song Qing-shu would not have to continue acting as Zhao Wei when danger descended. These people obviously wanted to kill him. If he surrendered, he would be really stupid. The guard who had been waiting for the blood to appear with a hideous smile suddenly realized that he could not move his knife. He looked down and saw that the tip of the knife was pinched lightly by 2 fingers. No matter how hard he tried, he could not move it at all. How was this possible? Before he could cry out in alarm, Song Qing-shu had already moved. Everyone in the room felt their vision blur, and the originally aggressive imperial bodyguards all fell to the ground one by one. Xiao 11th Lang was originally talking to Shun Bijuan, but the next moment he found that the guards around Song Qing-shu had fallen, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. He could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. Although he had not been paying attention to them, it was possible that he had taken care of so many imperial guards in an instant. This person's martial arts were really too terrifying. However, the word fear did not exist in Xiao 11th Lang's dictionary. He was only shocked for a moment, and then the next moment, he pulled out his knife and pounced on Song Qing-shu. At this time, Song Qing-shu was not in the mood to be entangled with him. Since so many people had come to capture him, it was obvious that Su Quan was in more danger. After forcing Xiao 11th Lang back with a few moves, his figure flashed and disappeared among the many palace walls in the palace. Of course, before he left, he sent a secret voice transmission to Shun Bijuan, telling her not to worry and that he would come back to save her. At this time, Shun Bijuan was still in a deep state of shock. A second ago, she had just seen a group of imperial guards come to capture someone aggressively. The next second, the other party defeated everyone and successfully escaped, including Xiao 11th Lang, who was highly skilled in martial arts. When Xiao 11th Lang came to kidnap her, the guard of the Shun family could be said to be vulnerable in front of him. Who on earth is this person? At this time, Xiao 11th Lang also came to Shun Bijuan's side with a look of shock and fear. His martial arts are actually this high. I don't know. Shun Bijuan shook her head and answered softly. Although she knew that the other party's martial arts were high, she did not expect it to be this high. Although the two of them did not have any relationship, her heart was still filled with joy. Chapter 1559. Hearing the other party's casual denial, Xiao 11th Lang couldn't help but ask suspiciously, "He entered the palace with you and often goes in and out of your side. How could you not know?" Shun Bijuan's expression turned cold. She said lightly, "If I really knew him, it would be easy for him to save me with his martial arts. Why would I always be manipulated by you?" Xiao 11th Lang started and thought that what she said made sense, so he didn't say anything else. After Song Qing-shu charged out, he didn't leave the royal palace. Instead, he headed straight for the Empress' bedroom. Since someone had been sent to capture him, it was clear that Su Quan would be in greater danger. By the time he reached the bedroom, he found that it was already empty. There were only some guards standing guard, but there was no sign of Su Quan. From the whispers of the serving girls and eunuchs outside, he learned that the Empress had been taken away by the guards. As for where they had taken her, he wasn't sure. Up until now, Song Qing-shu was completely dumbfounded. He didn't understand how the matter between him and Su Quan had been exposed. It had to be known that he had been extremely careful every time he went in and out of Su Quan's bedroom. No one had discovered him. Could it be that Yelu Isin has made a move? A guess popped up in Song Qing-shu's mind, but he couldn't be sure. After hesitating for a while, he decided to go ask Zhao Min first. After all, she had always been well informed, and he lacked information at the moment. He needed to understand the current situation first. He ran out of the palace without stopping and hurried to the secret stronghold of the Ruyang Palace. Zhao Min and Icy Snow were anxiously discussing something. Seeing him return, they couldn't help but let out a great sigh of relief. Sister Shui, I told you that with his abilities, he wouldn't be in any danger. You still had to worry about him. Zhao Min giggled and pushed Icy Snow beside her. Icy Snow couldn't help but roll her eyes. Just now, who was so anxious like an ant on a hot pan? Why is it all my business now? Sister Shui, Zhao Min scolded lightly. She stole a glance at Song Qing-shu, her beautiful face even more alluring. Do you already know what happened in the palace? Seeing the expressions of the two women, Song Qing-shu hurriedly asked. The case of the Hui Xian Courtyard CI is so explosive. Although the palace has tried its best to suppress this matter, how can such a thing be hidden? Zhao Min showed a trace of a teasing expression. Now, all of Shangjing is discussing who the musician, Zhao Wei, is that person who could seduce the beautiful Empress. The news is spread so quickly. Song Qing-shu was astonished. The speed at which the news spread was too fast. If someone said that there was no one behind the scenes adding fuel to the fire, he would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. At the side, Icy Snow revealed an odd expression. Qing-shu, even I have to admit that you're really good at dealing with women. It's only been a few days. It's not what you think. Seeing that Icy Snow was also gossiping, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be speechless. He had no choice but to explain the relationship between Su Quan and him. The twists and turns in the story made the two pairs of beautiful eyes widen. Zhao Min said with emotion, Even Empress Liao is your woman. My admiration for you is really endless like a surging river. Song Qing-shu was speechless. He had told Zhao Min this classic line from a movie in his previous life before, but he didn't expect her to learn it so quickly. Don't tell me that one day, even the Empress of our Mongolian Great Khan has a relationship with you too? Zhao Min sized him up suspiciously. Song Qing-shu became more and more depressed. Don't make me look like a planter, okay? Zhao Min curled her lips. I don't care. Anyway, you're not allowed to bring it to Ruyang Mansion. If I find out that you have something going on with my concubines or sisters-in-law one day, I'll castrate you. Song Qing-shu only felt a little cold down there. He hurriedly changed the topic. We've gone too far. What happened in the palace today? Zhao Min stopped smiling and said seriously, I heard that someone in the palace reported to the emperor that the empress had an affair with the musician Zhao Wei. Yelu Hongji was so furious that he killed a large number of people involved in the case, including those who failed to perform their duties in the greeting office. Hearing that eunuch Gao committed suicide to escape punishment, Song Qing-shu showed a strange expression. He was clearly Yelu Isin's man. I don't know whether he accepted his death voluntarily or committed suicide. Zhao Min snorted coldly. Thinking back to when Yelu Isin asked you to find a way to get close to the Empress, it's clear that he was the mastermind behind all of this. Song Qing-shu said with some annoyance, I was really careless. I thought that his plan couldn't be carried out before I took action. I didn't expect that he would directly frame me. It's not really a frame, Zhao Min said with some joy. You do have an affair with the Empress. Song Qing-shu looked depressed. Can you stop being sarcastic? Who told you to be so obsessed with women in the palace that you forgot your business? Zhao Min snorted coldly. Clearly, she was dissatisfied. Song Qingshu opened his mouth, but in the end, he didn't explain. After all, he was indeed careless here. Forget it. If I cause your little lover to die, you will hate me for the rest of your life. Zhao Min suddenly smiled and took the initiative to break the awkwardness in the room. According to the information I received, your little lover is now in the heavenly prison of Ely Courtyard. She is being interrogated by Yelu Yisin, the Privy Commissioner of Jibei Courtyard, and Zhang Xiaojia, the Privy Commissioner of Tongji Courtyard. Although the two of them don't seem to have any relationship, according to the information of the Ruyang Mansion, Zhang Xiaojia should be Yelu Yisin's man. Your little lover is in their hands. Even if she is pure, she will probably confess under torture, not to mention having an affair with you. The heavenly prison of Ely by Courtyard. Song Qingshu stood by the window and looked in that direction. I'm really fated with this place. He had saved Xia Qingqing's icy snow and yellow cheese, Xiao Zhonghui, several times. Do you plan to make a move today? Zhao Min came to his side and asked. Yes. Song Qingshu nodded. The longer Su Quan is in their hands, the more dangerous it will be. Well, we will go with you. I just want to confirm a guess in my mind. Zhao Min said thoughtfully. Song Qingshu looked back in confusion. What guess? It's not the time to say it yet. Zhao Min shook her head, seeing that she was unwilling to say it. Song Qingshu couldn't force her to say it. Then, the three of them began to prepare for the prison break. Originally, he planned to go alone, but Zhao Min and Icy Snow insisted on going together. He hesitated for a while and agreed. After all, both of them were masters. Even if they couldn't help, they could at least protect themselves. The three of them soon arrived at the periphery of Ely Courtyard. Zhao Min frowned and said, I know you're very skilled in martial arts, but are you going to rush in and save them? Song Qingshu raised a small porcelain bottle in his hand. I haven't had the chance to use the grieving wind softener that I obtained from the Western Xia's first-class hall. This time, I can make the disaster come to you. Zhao Min was stunned. Then, she smiled and said, I'm afraid the Western Xia people are going to be in big trouble this time. Suddenly, Song Qingshu's expression changed. He quickly pressed the two women down and said, Someone is coming. It's a top master. Chapter 1560. Zhao Min and Icy Snow hurriedly crouched down. From Song Qingshu's tone, it was obvious that this person wasn't on their side. They saw a middle-aged man in white slowly walking toward Ely by Courtyard's prison with an elegant and calm demeanor. Although he walked very slowly, no one could ignore his imposing manner. The man in white had his hands behind his back and didn't look like he was carrying a weapon. However, Zhao Min and Icy Snow immediately noticed what weapon he was carrying. Even from such a distance, they could sense a penetrating sword aura that sent chills down their spines. This sword aura clearly didn't come from a sword. Instead, it came from the man himself. Shui. Song Qingshu had already recognized the man's identity. He was the Southern Song Dynasty's #1 expert, Shui. Why is he here? Asked Zhao Min curiously. Song Qingshu shook his head as he was also curious. Just like that, Shui strolled into the courtyard. At this moment, the guards of Elite Courtyard had already reacted. They drew their swords and surrounded Shui. Unfortunately, there seemed to be an invisible force field around Shui. When these ordinary guards got close to him, their faces turned pale and they had difficulty breathing. They had no choice but to retreat. A few of them didn't believe it and forcefully slashed at Shui. Unfortunately, the surrounding people only saw a blur. In the next moment, these people were already covered in wounds and fell to the ground. It was unknown if they were dead or alive. As a result, the encirclement around him instantly doubled. No one dared to stay within a 3-meter radius of him. The guards could only surround him from afar. As he walked forward, the encirclement gradually retreated. This person's martial arts are so high. Icy Snow exclaimed. She didn't even see what happened, and those guards were already lying on the ground. He can indeed be ranked among the world's top experts. Song Qingshu praised. Although Icy Snow didn't see it clearly, he did. Shui attacked just now. It was just that his speed was too fast for ordinary people to react in time. At this thought, he couldn't help but feel proud. If he was in Shui Yi's shoes, he probably wouldn't even need to raise his hand. Why doesn't Prince Wei come out? Shui Yi suddenly stopped and raised his head towards Ili Bai courtyard. Although it didn't seem like he was shouting at the top of his lungs, his voice clearly spread to every corner of Ili Bai courtyard. It was clear how strong his inner strength was. His voice kept echoing in the courtyard. Shui Yi wasn't in a hurry and just stood there quietly as if waiting for something. Not long after, the gates of the dungeon opened and Yelu Isin walked out, escorted by a group of guards. The man with the mustache next to him is Zhang Xiaojia, the prefect of the northern courtyard. Zhao Min pointed at a Han official next to Yelu Isin. These two have gathered together. They must have started to interrogate the Empress. Song Qingshu couldn't help but worry about Su Quan's safety. Don't worry. Interrogating the Empress is not a small matter. Usually, several parties need to be present at the same time. Looking at the situation, they should have just started when they were interrupted by Shui Yi's people. Zhao Minwei knew what he was worried about. I hope so. Song Qingshu nodded and continued to pay attention to the situation. What business do you have with me? Yelu Isin frowned slightly as he looked at the scene before him. Why is Prince Wei asking when you already know the answer? Shui Yirun said coldly. First, where's Shun family's young lady now? Second, hand over the Mandarin duck knife. That night, he wanted to take advantage of the situation to kill Shen Bijuan. Unfortunately, he was interrupted by Song Qingshu and had no choice but to temporarily leave. When he went to King Wei's mansion again, he found that Shen Bijuan had already left. Shen Bijuan had always been an important part of Yelu Isin's plan, so her identity was a top secret in the Wei household. Shui Yi's men had interrogated a few of the maids and guards, but none of them knew where she was. He didn't really want to save Shen Bijuan. It was just that it would be a great blow to the imperial family's reputation if the news got out that the future crown princess of the court was in the hands of another man. After the painful experience of the humiliation of Jinkong, if something similar happened again, it would be a heavy blow to the entire country. At the same time, he had been searching for the Mandarin duck knife. From all the information he had, it was likely that both knives were in Yelu Isin's hands. He had planned to go to King Wei's mansion to find him, but Yelu Isin had been busy framing the Empress and the Prime Minister of the Northern Residence. If he wasn't in the palace, he was at Ili Yard. Shui Yi's men grew impatient and decided to go to Ili Yard to find him. At this time, Song Qingshu and the others also understood the purpose of his visit. Zhao Min couldn't help but smile and said, You're really lucky. There's actually a super expert who came out to fight for you. Song Qingshu finally revealed a hint of a smile. I hope he can muddy the waters as much as possible. How dare you? What do you think this place is? Take him down. Yelu Isin's expression was dark, his expression unfathomable. Zhang Xiaojia, on the side, couldn't restrain himself. He had been provoked in his own territory. If he didn't teach him a good lesson, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? With the order from their superior, the hesitating soldiers outside could only bite the bullet and charge forward. Fortunately, they were in a group this time, so they didn't have to worry about being killed instantly like the unlucky fellows before them. Shui Yi's martial arts were high, but he wasn't a simple-minded brute. He naturally didn't have the time to waste on these small fries. He suddenly moved, and the spears that were stabbing at him were all broken. Before anyone could react, he had already passed the encirclement of the soldiers like a rock spreading its wings, charging directly at Yelu Isin in the distance. Everyone understood the principle of capturing the ringleader first. Protect King Wei. Protect King Wei. Zhang Xiaojia was shocked. He hurriedly called for the guard beside him to charge forward while he took a few steps back. However, he and Yelu Isin were both high-ranking officials of the imperial court, and the guards around them weren't for nothing. They all orderly stood in front of the two. First, a group of shield-bearers stepped in front of the two. Then, the archers knocked their arrows, and in one go, dozens of arrows shot towards Shui Yi in midair. Unfortunately, Shui Yi's movement technique was too ingenious. He left several afterimages in midair, and his entire body was like a graceful swan. The arrows couldn't hit him at all. In just a short while, Shui Yi had closed the distance between the two sides. The shield bearers at the front all shouted, raising their shields and charging forward. Shui Yi frowned. This thing couldn't be avoided, so he could only block one of the shields with his palm. Just as he was about to use the inner force in his palm to send the opponent flying to create an opening, suddenly, dozens of spears shot out from the gap between the shields, as if they could poke him into a hornet's nest in an instant. However, Shui was from the army after all, so how could he not be on guard against the military's methods? He instantly shot up into the sky and dodged the enemy's fatal attack. After that, everyone saw a brilliant sword light flash in midair. When everyone recovered from their shock, they discovered that the shields in the hands of the 3 layers of defense had been shattered into pieces, and the guards had fallen to the ground. As expected of the bloody-robed man who killed his way out a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Even with Song Qingshu's picky eyes, he couldn't help but admire the beauty of Shui Yi's sword just now. Zhao Min stared closely at Yellow Yisun. Seeing his slightly panicked expression, she couldn't help but look a little confused. Did I guess wrong? Chapter 1561. The heavily armed heavy infantryman, who looked overbearing just a second ago, fell miserably to the ground in the next second. It was obvious that they had no energy left to fight. In fact, this kind of heavy infantryman was a powerful weapon against martial arts masters. Ordinary masters who were surrounded by the shield formation would be pierced into a hornet's nest. It was a pity that their opponent this time was not an ordinary martial arts master, but one of the best swordsmen in the world. In addition, the opponent was originally from the army, so he was quite familiar with the formations of the army, so he was defeated so quickly. Now, most of the main soldiers in front of Yellow Yisun and Zhang Xiaojie had fallen, leaving only a few personal guards in front of them, trembling with fear. The reason for this predicament was that they had come to Yili Courtyard to investigate a case, so the guard were naturally in charge of the Yili Courtyard. Therefore, they did not bring many personal guards. Otherwise, although the Wei Mansion did not have as many top masters as the Riyang Mansion, it was still worthy of a cloud of masters. Although Shui Yisun was a little crazy with his swordsmanship, he was not a fool. On the surface, it seemed that he had directly charged into the Yili Courtyard's prison, but in fact, he had done some investigation and found that this was the time when the guard around Yellow Yisun were at their weakest. Seeing the opponent walking towards him step by step, Zhang Xiaojie was so scared that his legs trembled. Especially when he saw the beads of blood dripping from the opponent's sword, he almost fainted. Shui Yisun sneered and stabbed his sword at Yellow Yisun. He knew that this was the territory of the Khitans, so it was not suitable for a long battle. Otherwise, when more and more soldiers came, he did not want to be surrounded. The nearly 10 guards around Yellow Yisun were famous figures in the martial arts world of Shangxi. Unfortunately, they had encountered Shui Yisun, and a man in a blood-red robe, famous for his murderous aura. Before they even started fighting, they were suppressed by the murderous aura of the other party and found it difficult to breathe. They could not even use half of their martial arts. Then they saw a flash of red sword light, and this was the last thing they saw in this world. Seeing that he was about to subdue Yellow Yisun, the corners of Shui Yisun's mouth rose slightly, and his expression finally eased a little. But before his smile could fully appear, his expression suddenly changed. He turned his sword back and flicked it, knocking back a flying saber. Audacious thief! How dare you behave atrociously in the Yili Bai courtyard? The newcomer was tall and burly, emitting a hint of wild charm from head to toe. It was Xiao 11th Lang, who had taken over as the inspector of the front palace. He had originally come to announce the imperial edict, but he did not expect to see Shui Yi committing the crime. Upon seeing Xiao 11 Lang, Zhao Min nudged Song Qingshu, who was beside her, and teased, "This person looks more manly than a pretty boy like you." Song Qingshu didn't take it to heart and replied indifferently, "I rely on my talent and inner qualities, not my face to make a living." Shameless. Zhao Min scolded jokingly. I See Snow, who was at the side, nodded in agreement and continued watching. At this moment, Shui Yi also saw the appearance of the person who had come. He could not help but laugh coldly. Xiao 11th Lang? Just in time to settle the debt of kidnapping young Miss Shun before I leave. He had stayed in Shangjing City for a long time and had already found out who had kidnapped Shen Bijuan. Although he now planned to kill Shen Bijuan to avoid the humiliation of the imperial family, he hated the instigator of the incident even more. Therefore, he had already made preparations in his heart to kill Yelu Yisin after finding out the whereabouts of the Mandarin duck saber. As for the fact that killing an important official of Liao would cause the relationship between Song and Liao to deteriorate, he did not care at all. After all, Liao was no longer what it used to be, and the two countries were not even bordering each other. Liao could not retaliate even if it wanted to. The only thing that could affect it was the joint attack on the Jin Kingdom. However, the northern expedition was Han Xingzhou's matter. He was born in the Shui family and had always been on the same side as the Jia family, so he did not want to see Han Xingzhou succeed in this northern expedition. However, with such a huge ruckus in Liao, he would inevitably face impeachment from Han Xingzhou's camp when he returned. If he could solve the case of the kidnapper of the crown princess, not only would he not be punished, but he would also be meritorious. Naturally, he would not have to worry about the aftermath. Therefore, the gaze he used to look at Xiao 11 Lang instantly became fiery, causing the other party to feel a chill. Xiao 11 Lang only thought that it was because the other party's murderous aura was too strong, so he did not think too much about it. He directly brandished his saber and pounced over. He was very confident in his saber techniques. In the whole of Liao, apart from Xiao Feng and his son, as well as the mysterious great secret agent Suyin, he did not take anyone else seriously. Moreover, even if he were to go up against these three people, he did not think that he would lose. If he was given another 10 years to grow, he even thought that he could become the #1 expert in Liao. A sabersman should have a disdainful aura in his bones. Only then would he be able to reach the highest realm of saber techniques. However, during this period of time, his indomitable momentum had been somewhat reduced because he had encountered two mysterious people twice in a row. The first time was the mysterious person he had met on the street that night. The two of them had exchanged dozens of blows, and he felt that the other party had not used his full strength at all and was just toying with him. The second time was when he had tried to capture Zhao Wei in the palace previously. The other party had actually left calmly under his nose, which was really a big blow to him. Thinking of these two things, Xiao 11th Lang's indomitable momentum suddenly paused, and there was a flaw in his perfect saber intent. If he had been up against an ordinary expert, it would not have been a problem. However, what kind of person was Shui Yi? He had instantly caught that fleeting flaw. Everyone only felt that their vision had turned red, and it was as if a bright blood-colored flower had bloomed in the field. Only Song Qing-shu realized that it was the sword aura released by Shui Yi's bloodstained sword. At that moment, the sword aura was so dazzling that there were only a few people present who could open their eyes. Everyone only heard the clanging sound of the tip of the saber clashing. When the blood faded and everyone opened their eyes, they saw that Xiao 11th Lang was already half kneeling on the ground. There were more than 10 bloody holes all over his body, and his clothes were already in tatters. If it were not for the saber in his hand that was inserted into the ground to support most of his weight, he would probably have already fallen to the ground by now. The guards present were in an uproar. One must know that Xiao 11th Lang was a famous expert in the capital city, and he could be considered invincible in the army. No one expected that he would actually be defeated in an instant, and so badly at that. He actually survived my ultimate move? Shui let out a cry of surprise, but there was a hint of admiration in his eyes. Only Song Qing-shu understood that the current Xiao 11th Lang was not the Xiao 11th Lang in the original work who had comprehended becoming one with the saber. It was normal for him to be unable to defeat Shui Yi. However, he had not expected that he would be defeated so easily. After all, He had exchanged blows with Xiao 11th Lang before and knew Xiao 11th Lang's martial arts. No matter what, it would take at least 180 moves to determine the victor. Why did he suddenly hesitate in that saber strike just now? Song Qing-shu was very puzzled. How could he know that the other party's confidence had suffered a setback because he had exchanged blows with him twice in a row? As a result, his combat prowess had dropped by at least 30%. It must be known that confidence was very important for an expert who used the saber. However, he did not have the time to care about this now. Instead, he said to the two girls beside him, "You two keep watch over here. I'll take this opportunity to go in and save Su Quan." "All right." Icy Snow nodded. Zhao Min, who was at the side, seemed not to have heard anything and stared at a certain person in the field thoughtfully. Chapter 1562. Song Qing-shu took advantage of the fact that everyone's attention was on Shui Yi's men outside to sneak into the heavenly prison of Yili Courtyard. Most of the guards in the heavenly prison had been drawn out, leaving only a small number of soldiers. Song Qing-shu could easily avoid them, and those that he couldn't avoid were knocked out. This wasn't the first time he came to the heavenly prison. Song Qing-shu didn't go to the West Wing, where the ordinary prisoners were locked up, but he easily found the East Wing, where the important people of the imperial court were locked up. He heard Su Quan's charming figure from afar, and thought that something had happened to her. He hurried over, and when he saw the situation inside, he couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that Su Quan was using the celestial music soul seizing technique on a prison guard. Looking at the confused look in the prison guard's eyes, he had most likely fallen for the technique. Song Qing-shu directly knocked out the prison guard, and with a wave of his sword Qi, he cut off the shackles of the cell. He waved at Su Quan, "Come out quickly." Su Quan realized that there was a strong enemy outside. With her personality, she would not sit still and wait for death. She was concentrating on using her charm technique to confuse the jailer and take the opportunity to escape. However, she was shocked by the sudden change. When she saw the other party's face, her worry turned to joy. She immediately threw herself into his arms, and her voice trembled. "Qing-shu, I thought I would never see you again." Previously, when she was resting in the palace, the guards suddenly barged in and brought her to the heavenly prison. Just a moment ago, she was the high and mighty empress, and in the next moment, she was beaten down to the ground. Su Quan was extremely terrified, thinking that her identity had been exposed. She couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. She had been forcing herself to hold on, and now that she saw Song Qing-shu, she finally revealed a woman's weakness. "All right, it's all right. I'm here to save you now." Song Qing-shu patted her shoulder and felt the delicate body in his arms tremble slightly. He felt that the usually strong Su Quan was probably scared out of her wits this time. "I'm sorry. Originally, I wanted to use Liao's identity as Empress to help you, who knew that my identity would be exposed, causing all my efforts to go to waste." Su Quan couldn't help but feel sorrowful when she thought of all her years of hard work going to waste. Song Qing-shu hurriedly comforted her. "Don't worry, this time it's not your fault. It's Yelu Isin's conspiracy." He hurriedly explained the whole thing, then pulled her out. "We'll talk about the details later. Let's take this opportunity to get out." With his arm around Su Quan's waist, Song Qing-shu quickly rushed out of the prison and found that it was a mess outside. Yelu Isin was nowhere to be seen, and even Shui Yi was nowhere to be found. When they finally found Icy Snow, they realized that Zhao Min wasn't around either. Song Qing-shu asked curiously, "Where's Miss Zhao?" Icy Snow was originally anxious, but when she saw him coming out safely, she heaved a sigh of relief and answered, "Shui Yi's men kidnapped Yelu Isin just now. From their conversation, it seems like they're going to get some Mandarin duck saber. Miss Zhao went after them and asked me to wait for you here." At this time, when she saw Su Quan in his arms, a strange look flashed across Icy Snow's eyes. She thought that this was the famous Empress of Liao. She was indeed peerlessly beautiful. "Hello, Miss Su." "Greetings, Sister Icy Snow." Suquan also bowed in return. Icy Snow's jade-like body also amazed her. She sighed inwardly that even the women around her lover were so outstanding, putting a lot of pressure on her. When she was hanging out with Song Qing-shu, she naturally knew of their existence in the capital city. Now that she heard that Miss Zhao wasn't around, it was obvious that this person was Icy Snow. In just a short moment, dozens of thoughts flashed through the minds of the two women. However, Song Qing-shu frowned and said, "It's too reckless for her to go after them alone." Although Zhao Min's martial arts were not bad, it was nothing in front of Shui Yi's men. Icy Snow suddenly remembered something and said hurriedly, "Miss Zhao said that she will leave a mark along the way and asked you to follow her after you come out." Song Qing-shu was relieved. Zhao Min was indeed not an impulsive and reckless person. She had already prepared a way out. Then let's go quickly. He was worried that something might happen to Zhao Min. Without asking for their opinion, he directly hugged one in each hand and chased after the direction that Zhao Min left. On the other hand, Icy Snow was famous for being a good woman, especially since she was now wearing the identity of Lady Who. She was not used to being so intimate with Song Qing-shu in front of other women. Icy Snow opened her mouth and noticed the worry between Song Qing-shu's brows. In the end, she didn't say anything. "Let's talk about it after we find Miss Zhao. I must find a chance to tell Qing-shu not to do this to me in front of others in the future." She was this kind. Even if she felt a little uncomfortable, she would still consider the safety of others first. At this moment, Song Qing-shu didn't have the time to pay attention to the thoughts of the women around him. He was more worried that he couldn't find Zhao Min. However, he soon relaxed. In the beginning, there was actually no need for him to look for the mark that Zhao Min left behind. He just needed to follow the soldiers on the street. After all, the Chitons would naturally chase after the Prince of Wei who was kidnapped. After chasing for a while, Su Quan couldn't help but say in astonishment, "This Miss Zhao's Qinggong is really good." She had heard a little about Shui Yi's martial arts. Although he was carrying a person, even Liao's cavalry couldn't catch up with him. However, Zhao Min didn't lose him at all. This Qinggong made her sigh in admiration. Song Qing-shu naturally knew the reason. If it was in the past, Zhao Min might not be able to keep up with Shui Yi. However, not long ago, he had taught her the Qinggong of treading on sand without a trace. Zhao Min was naturally talented, so she could get twice the result with half the effort when practicing Qinggong. Now, her Qinggong was considered top-notch in the martial arts world. After chasing for a while, he realized that the Khitan soldiers seemed to have lost their direction and started to split up to search. Song Qing-shu had no choice but to stop and start to look for the mark that Zhao Min left behind. Fortunately, it didn't take long before he found the agreed mark on a tree. However, it didn't seem to be running out of the city, but back into the city. Song Qing-shu instantly felt relieved. No matter how good Shui Yi's Qinggong was, he couldn't outrun the elite cavalry of the Khitan in the wild with a person. He could only make use of the complicated environment and terrain of Shangjing to shake off the pursuers and prevent the cavalry from using their sprinting speed. Following the marks left behind by Zhao Min all the way, Song Qing-shu made 7 or 8 detours very quickly. Song Qing-shu's Qinggong was very good. Not long after, he could vaguely see Zhao Min's silhouette in front of him. Zhao Min was lying on a tree, looking at a remote courtyard not far away. The arrival of Song Qing-shu and the others gave her a fright. When she saw them clearly, she let out a sigh of relief. "Shoo, they just entered the courtyard. I didn't dare to get too close for fear of being discovered." Although Shui Yi had left first, he had to shake off the pursuers with a person, so he wasted a lot of time. As a result, he arrived at about the same time as Song Qing-shu, who had followed the mark. "Is this the secret stronghold of the Imperial City Department?" Song Qing-shu asked curiously when he saw how remote this place was. Zhao Min shook her head. "I don't think so. I know most of the strongholds of the Imperial City Department. This seems to be Yalu Isen's territory. I saw Yalu Isen giving directions to Shui Yi along the way. Are they really here for the Mandarin Duck's saber?" Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh at Shui Yi's bravery. He actually dared to follow Yalu Isen's directions. Wasn't he afraid of an ambush? However, Shui was so arrogant and conceited that he probably didn't care about any ambush. Let's go take a look. Song Qingshu sneaked into the courtyard with the three women. With his aura covering them, they didn't have to worry about being discovered by the people in the house. Chapter 1563. They sneaked into the courtyard. The entire place seemed to be abandoned. There were no servants or maids, so they were not discovered. When they came to a corner, they held their breaths and looked inside. Shui Yiren let go of Yelu Yisin and said coldly, "I've found the place you mentioned. Where are the Mandarin duck sabers? If you can't find them, don't blame me for being ruthless. I'll find them for you now." Yelu Yisin's tone was a little gloomy. Clearly, he was the number one person in the imperial court not long ago. Anyone would be in a bad mood now that he was a prisoner. As he spoke, he began to fiddle with the bedboard. It turned out that there was a secret compartment under the bedboard. Shui Yiren was not worried that his opponent would do anything strange. At such a close distance, he was confident that he could slit his opponent's throat with one strike. After fiddling for a long time, Yelu Yisin finally took out a long box from the secret compartment. As he spoke, he handed it to Shui Yiren. "This is the Mandarin duck saber." Shui Yiren took a step back and raised his sword. He said coldly, "Stand there and don't move. Open the box first." Although he was immersed in swordsmanship, he was not a fool. He knew that there were some traps in the pugilistic world that could trick martial arts experts, such as the torrential pear blossom needle. He was worried that the other party had something similar in a box. At such a close distance, he was not confident that he could dodge it. Yelu Yisin was obedient. He did not take the opportunity to rush over. Instead, he opened the box obediently. There were indeed two shining sabers inside. Mandarin duck sabers. Shui Yiren's eyes revealed a hint of joy. At this moment, Icy Snow, who was outside the window, also saw the sabers in the box. One of them was the cold moon saber that she had lost. But soon, a hint of doubt appeared in her eyes. This saber. Shui Yiren waved his hand and sucked the wooden box over. He took out the two sabers and was still in disbelief. "I actually obtained the legendary Mandarin duck sabers?" However, he was also doubtful. No matter how sharp these two sabers were, they were at most like the heavenly sword and the dragon saber. How could they be invincible in the world? He carefully examined the sabers in his hand to see if there were any secrets on them. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. A saber suddenly appeared in Yelu Yisin's hand. The scabbard was black, the hilt was curved, and the blade was green. It was as green as the distant mountains, as green as the trees in spring, and as green as the lake in the eyes of lovers. The green saber light was curved. At first, it looked like a crescent moon. Suddenly, it turned into a rainbow. Even though it was not unsheathed, it exuded a threatening, killing intent. Full moon scimitar? Although Song Qingshu had never seen the real full moon scimitar, he was certain that the one in Yelu Yisin's hand was the real one. At first glance, there was nothing special about the crescent blade, but when Yelu Yisin unsheathed it, there was a strange demonic aura that made people dizzy and confused. Song Qingshu could see him draw his saber, but in the eyes of the three girls, it was a very fast move. What an evil slash! This blade already had the power to shake the heavens and split the earth. The invincible full moon scimitar, the devil's scimitar that frightened the world, the divine scimitar that shook the world, a scimitar that shocked the world. There was suddenly light in the somewhat dark room. Moonlight of full moon. Even though Shui had always been cautious, he was still overwhelmed by joy when he obtained the Mandarin duck sabers, causing him to let his guard down a little. By the time he noticed the saber light, it was already too late. In his haste, he did not have time to draw his sword. He could only use the two Mandarin duck sabers in his hands to meet the attack. Soon, there was a crisp sound in the room. When the moonlight in the room faded, Shui Yisin retreated to the wall with a pale face. There was a hideous wound on his chest. The wound was so deep that bone could be seen. Clearly, he had been seriously injured. Yelu Yisin did not continue to attack. Instead, he stood in place and sighed, as expected of a Shui Yisan who shakes the world. When the divine scimitar is drawn, those who face it must die. I'm afraid you're the first person who can take the divine scimitar head-on and not die. Shui Yisan looked at the broken half of the saber in his hand. How could he not know that he had been tricked? He said hatefully, "The one in your hand is the real Mandarin duck saber?" That's right. Yellow Yisan no longer had any of his previous fear and humility. His face was full of pride. My painstaking efforts were not in vain. This Mandarin duck saber has finally fallen into my hands. The women outside the window were also shocked. Although they had guessed that there was something wrong with Yellow Yisan, they did not know that his martial arts were this high. They had seen Shui Yisan's martial arts, but he had been seriously injured by a single slash. That slash just now was too demonic. It made their souls tremble, and they felt like they could not muster the courage to resist. Only Song Qing-shu had seen it clearly. That slash was indeed very demonic. With his current cultivation, if he had been unprepared, there was a high chance that he would have been seriously injured. That slash seemed to have touched the threshold of the rules, and it seemed to have transcended the martial arts of the mortal world. Of course, from Song Qing-shu's point of view, Yellow Yisan's martial arts were actually about the same as Shui Yisan's. Even if it was slightly higher, there would not be a difference in level. The main reason why Shui Yisan had lost so quickly and so miserably was that he had been ambushed while he was unprepared. Being able to survive such a demonic slash in such a hurry was enough to show Shui Yisan's cultivation. Divine Blade Slash. Shui Yisan silently recited the move that had injured him. Suddenly, his expression changed. Could it be the Divine Blade Slash that the leader of the Ming Dynasty used hundreds of years ago? Yellow Yisan looked at him in surprise. This happened hundreds of years ago. Even many people in the Ming Dynasty don't know about it. I didn't expect you to know about it. In the exchange of blows just now, although he had broken the fake Mandarin duck saber in his opponent's hand and severely injured him, he had still picked up his sword again in that instant. No one could ignore a bloody-robed man with a sword in his hand, even if he was heavily injured. Therefore, Yellow Yisan did not mind talking to him for a while. His opponent now had such a big wound on his body. As time passed, his blood would take away more and more of his strength. Everyone knows that the secret of the Mandarin duck saber is invincible in the world, but no one knows how to use it to become invincible in the world. Yellow Yisan caressed the full moon scimitar in his hand. Song Qing-shu and Icy Snow, who were outside the window, quickly recognized that the demonic full moon scimitar was a combination of the cold moon saber and another smaller saber. It must be the deer cutter that the Shun family lost. People only know about the heaven and earth great shift and the sacred fire insignia of the Ming Dynasty, but they don't know that there was another treasure that was above them hundreds of years ago. Yellow Yisan caressed the full moon saber in his hand as if he was caressing the body of his lover. That is the invincible Divine Blade Slash. Chapter 1564. Whether it was Song Qing-shu or Zhao Min and the other women, none of them knew about this secret. They looked at each other and decided to observe the situation first. Yellow Yisan seemed to be interested and began to explain. In those days, the hierarch of the Ming Dynasty used the full moon scimitar and the divine blade cut to dominate the martial arts world. However, this scimitar seemed to have a demonic nature that could affect the mind of the person holding it, causing the hierarch of the Ming Dynasty to be possessed by the devil. Therefore, rumors began to spread in the martial arts world that although the devil cult's martial arts began to improve rapidly, its foundation was not stable and it was easy to be possessed by the devil. The hierarch of the Ming Dynasty was also very worried about this. Later, for some reason, the male scimitar was accidentally lost. Without the male scimitar, the power of the divine blade cut was greatly reduced. Later, the hierarch of the Ming Dynasty had no choice but to learn the heaven and earth grand shift and sealed the scimitar together with the divine blade cut. Decades later, those old people passed away and the new generation of the Ming Dynasty didn't even know the name of the scimitar. All that was left were some memories of the past. Because the full moon scimitar was a male and a female, it was gradually called the Mandarin duck scimitar. The secret of invincibility in the Mandarin duck scimitar also came from the Ming dynasty. However, few people actually know what the Mandarin duck scimitar is. Speaking of the past, Yalu Yisin also sighed. Since it is an item of the Ming dynasty, why did the Mandarin duck scimitar fall into the hands of the Shun family of Shanin? For some reason, Shui Yiren's wounds were still bleeding, but he still cared about these questions. Yalu Yisin looked at him in surprise, but as time went by, Shui Yiren's strength would become weaker and weaker. He didn't mind wasting some time. First of all, it was not the Mandarin duck scimitar that fell into the hands of the Shun family, but the female scimitar fell into the hands of the Shun family. At that time, the Ming dynasty lost the male scimitar. Although it was impossible to recreate the glory of the divine blade cut, the hierarch still passed down the remaining female scimitar generation after generation. However, after the Ming dynasty hierarch Feng La rebelled and was suppressed by Huang Shang, the female scimitar was passed down to the next hierarch Zhongxiang. Zhongxiang took the remnants of the Ming dynasty to Dongting Lake, but was killed by Song General Kong Yanzhou. The female scimitar fell into the hands of the successor Yang Yao, and when Yufei defeated Yang Yao, the female scimitar fell into the hands of the dynasty. The female scimitar was passed down to the scimitar in the clan Qing dynasty Yang family. Yalu Yisin slowly recounted this secret. Song Qing Shu, who was listening outside the window, nodded inwardly. This was not much different from the information he had received before. Shui Yiren to be Shui. Yinsek Shui family's Yair, family Shilin. Yes, Yalu Yiren didn't deny it. I searched for a long time and finally found the whereabouts of the female scimitar. Of course, I wouldn't let it go. Speaking of which, it's all thanks to the plots in your court that my people could get it so easily. Shui Yiren knew that he was telling the truth. If it weren't for the open and secret struggle between Prince Yi and the Crown Prince, Liao wouldn't have been able to go so deep into the hinterland to kidnap the Crown Princess. Hasn't the male scimitar of the Mandarin duck scimitar been missing for a long time? Where did you find it? Shui Yiren asked curiously. Speaking of the whereabouts of the male scimitar, I have to thank one person. Yalu Yiren's tone was full of the smile of a victor. Clearly, he wasn't really thanking that person. The male scimitar is suspected to have fallen into the hands of Yuan Chonghuan. Yuan Chonghuan was killed by Chongzhen, and the male scimitar fell into the hands of the Ming dynasty. Later, Li Ziqing conquered Beijing, and the male scimitar naturally fell into his hands. However, he didn't know the secret of the Mandarin duck scimitar and thought it was just an ordinary scimitar. So, he casually gave it to the head of the four guards, Flying Fox. Icy Snow, who was outside the window, hurriedly covered her mouth, worried that the people inside would hear. She didn't expect that her late husband's cold moon scimitar was one of the famous Mandarin duck scimitars. Later, Flying Fox passed the scimitar to his son, Liao Dong's swordsman Hui Dao. After Hui Dao died in the battle with Miao Renfeng, the scimitar disappeared and only reappeared recently. Yalu Yiren said. Shui Yiren's heart skipped a beat. Is it the one that Hui Dao's widow was carrying? As a secret agent of the Imperial City Department, he naturally knew everything that happened in Shanjing. That's right, Yalu Yiren chuckled. At first, I was worried that someone was deliberately using this scimitar to lure the snake out of its hole, so I didn't dare to make a move. I could only ask the Shishao people to help me test the waters. As expected, Xiao Ban was lured out. Outside the window, Song Qing and Zhao Min looked at each other and saw the sudden realization in each other's eyes. They connected the dots and realized that Yalu Yisin was the one behind all this. Shui Yiren suddenly asked a key question. How did you know the secret of the Mandarin duck scimitar? And how did you learn the divine scimitar slash? Yalu Yiren stroked his beard proudly. There are very few secrets of the various sects and sects in this world and secret martial arts manuals that I don't know. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. This Yalu Yisin's tone is somewhat similar to someone in my memory. At this moment, Shui Yiren suddenly attacked with his sword. A dazzling blood-red light bloomed in the room. This was the power of the blood-red man's swordsmanship. Yelu Irin was shocked. He didn't expect that Shui Irin would still have the strength to fight back after bleeding for so long. The brilliance of the other sword was too dazzling. It could be said that it was the culmination of a lifetime's worth of martial arts. Yelu Irin didn't dare to face it head-on and could only temporarily retreat to defend himself. Shui Irin had been waiting for this opportunity. He took the opportunity to break open the window and ran out. In a few leaps, he disappeared from the courtyard. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. Shui Irin had deliberately chatted with Yelu Irin in order to secretly accumulate power. This must be the Shui family's secret technique. However, the price must be great. After this, Shui Irin would probably never be able to return to his peak. Watching his figure disappear, Yelu Irin sneered. Do you think you can escape? The other party was seriously injured and had burned his blood essence to worsen his injuries. How could he outrun Yelu Irin in his peak condition? However, just as he reached the window, he suddenly thought of something and hurriedly turned his head. He was shocked to find a man and 3 women in the room. His expression changed drastically. Song Qingshu. Before Song Qingshu could answer, Zhao Min, who was at the side, smiled and said, "As expected, you know him. It seems that my guess was correct. Long time no see, Physician Ping." "Oh no, you should be called Murong Jingwe." Icy Snow was shocked and furious. "You're Murong Jingwe?" She had finally found the enemy who killed her husband. How could she not feel mixed feelings? Suquan looked at him doubtfully. It should be known that she had fought wits and courage with this powerful official as Xiao Guanyin. She didn't expect him to have another identity. Song Qingshu revealed an as expected expression. In fact, he had long suspected Yelu Irin's identity. After hearing the other party's words, he finally confirmed it. Chapter 1565. Yelu Isin stared at everyone coldly. To be honest, he had always been a little afraid of Song Qingshu. After all, a person's reputation was like the shadow of a tree. Moreover, he had fought with Song Qingshu before and knew that Song Qingshu's martial arts skills were really rare. However, now that he had learned the Divine Blade Slash and had severely injured the super expert Shui Irin with a single slash, he was bursting with confidence and no longer took Song Qingshu seriously. So what if I am? Yelu Isin glanced at Icy Snow greedily. I've long been interested in the beautiful widow, Hu Dao. However, it was inconvenient for me to make a move previously for the sake of the great cause, so I could only endure it. Now that the dust has settled, I don't have to suppress it anymore. Killing her husband and taking his wife is the happiest thing in the world. Icy Snow trembled with anger. Big brother who was really killed by you. Initially, Black Spirit Eyes wanted Hu Dao and Miao Rinfeng to perish together, but unfortunately, only one died. Yelu Isin shook his head as if he was regretful. If I had known that Hu Dao and Miao Rinfeng's wives are both great beauties, I would have done it myself instead of relying on Tian Gudong. Shameless. Icy Snow was trembling with anger, but she did not lose her mind. Her opponent's bewitching slash just now made her wary. She knew that not only would she not be able to take revenge, but she would also be easily controlled by him. Yelu Isin shifted his gaze to Zhao Min next to him. "Princess, you're here too. Why? Are you here for the antidote of the 3 corpse brain pill? Don't worry. As long as you serve me well, I'll give you the antidote." Zhao Min said coldly, "Don't worry. I'll tear you into pieces." "Really?" Yelu Isin snorted. When he saw Suquan next to him, he could not help but look surprised. "Yeah, the Empress is here too. Yelu Isin, I've learned your plot. Just wait for your family to be exterminated." Suquan was still using Xiao Guanin's appearance, so she was using Xiao Guanin's tone to speak. "Your Highness can't even protect yourself right now. So why are you still putting on airs as an empress?" Yelu Isin snorted. "Do you think Yelu Hongji will believe you? Right now, he's in a state of extreme anger for being cuckolded. He probably won't even see you." Speaking of this, Yelu Isin suddenly looked at Song Qingshu with admiration. "Sometimes I have to admire you for being able to get involved with so many famous beauties and chivalrous women in Jianghu." Now, even the Empress of Great Liao can't escape from your clutches. Tut, 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 your luck with women is really enviable. Devil's Claw. Song Qing was speechless. Devil your sister's claw. Hearing his words, Yelu Isin's face was filled with anger. Oof, but that's all in the past. I'll gladly accept your female confidence. As soon as he said this, Zhao Min and the other two women blushed, obviously embarrassed and angry at the same time. Song Qingshu looked at him strangely. I really don't understand where your confidence comes from. Do you think you're invincible just because you've learned the divine knife slash from hundreds of years ago? Yelu Isin laughed loudly. My martial arts are already good enough to be arrogant in Jianghu. Now that I've learned the divine knife slash, it's like adding wings to a tiger. Song, I know your martial arts are good, but today you're destined to die under the full moon scimitar. Song Qingshu shook his head and sighed. From what you've said before, this knife is a demonic knife. It has a strange demonic nature that can easily affect its owner's mind. I didn't think much of it first, but seeing how arrogant you are now, it seems that the rumors are true. Yelu Isin's expression changed slightly. Clearly, he had also realized the same problem when he heard the other party's reminder. However, he quickly adjusted his mood. With the divine knife in hand, I'm invincible. So what if I'm a little arrogant? Song Qingshu smiled faintly. Even with the divine knife in hand, some people are destined to never become the god of knives. Then you can try. Yelu Isin sneered, and the unique dragon roar of a divine weapon rang out in the room. The scimitar in his hand was like an antelope's horn as it slashed towards Song Qingshu. Zhao Min and the other women could only see the full moon rise in the room again. They couldn't see anything else and could only be anxious but unable to help. Song Qingshu, however, had a different feeling. The moment the other party slashed at him, the surrounding air seemed to become sticky. He wanted to move, but found that his body felt like it had sunk into a swamp. To move, he had to use 10 times his usual strength. In a battle between experts, there was only a sliver of difference. This moment of delay was enough for the other party to kill you more than 10 times. No wonder the leader of the Ming dynasty could dominate the martial arts world with a divine knife slash. This martial art has indeed touched the threshold of space. At this moment, Song Qingshu was still in the mood to comment on the other party's knife technique. However, the next moment, the demonic knife light had already slashed to the end, cutting him in half. However, Yelu Isin didn't feel happy at all, because the feeling of the knife just now made him understand that he hadn't hit the other party's real body, but only an afterimage. The knife in his hand didn't stop and directly swung back from the bottom. This was the advantage of the full moon scimitar. It could draw circles even more than Zhang Sanfeng's Taiji fist. With a crisp ding sound, the tip of the saber chopped the sword chi that was stabbing towards the back of his neck. The saber and the sword collided, and the dispersed sword chi shattered the mask on his face, revealing Murong Jingyue's original appearance. Murong Jingyue's heart sank. The attack just now had shattered his final fantasy. He had fought head-on, but he hadn't been able to dispel the other party's sword chi. Obviously, the other party's skills were above his. However, he didn't have time to care about anything else. Seeing Song Qingshu's gradually appearing figure, he couldn't help but open his mouth wide in shock. How is this possible? How did you suddenly appear behind me? Just now, he had firmly locked onto the other party, but the moment the knife was about to hit the other party's aura suddenly disappeared. He kept his eyes wide open, but the other party's clothes didn't even move. How could he directly appear behind him? Song Qingshu shook his head. The divine knife slash has indeed touched the threshold of space. Unfortunately, the person using the knife is still a person in the painting, unable to jump out of the box of space. Just now, when he executed Imminent Chasm, he wasn't in this space, so the divine knife slash naturally couldn't restrain him. Murong Jingyue's face suddenly flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. The crescent moon scimitar in his hand split into a male and female scimitar and shot towards Icy Snow and Su Quan in a strange arc. The speed of the scimitar wasn't inferior to the divine scimitar chop. Song Qingshu's expression finally changed. Although icy snow and Su Quan's martial arts weren't weak, they most likely couldn't withstand this bewitching and demonic knife. How could he sit still when he imagined the scene of the other party dying? He instantly executed imminent chasm twice to strike down the male and female knives. However, Murong Jingwei took advantage of this opportunity and arrived at Zhao Min's side. Zhao Min hastily counterattacked, but it was a pity that Murong Jingwei's martial arts had already advanced by leaps and bounds. In an instant, Murong Jingwei had seized the vital point on her neck. Song, you still lost in the end. With the hostage in hand, Murong Jingwei regained his confidence. Chapter 1566. Zhao Min was also unyielding. When she saw that she was restrained, she directly stabbed her only son with her sword. She planned to use moves like living with heaven and earth and jade-shattering Kuangang to perish together with the opponent. However, Murong Jingwei's martial arts were profound, and he had rich experience in the pugilistic world. He was already prepared for this. With a tap of his finger, he sealed the numbing acupoint on her elbow. Zhao Min's sword could only droop down powerlessly. Do you think you've won with the hostage in your hands? Song Qingshu's expression was calm as he quietly looked at the opponent. Of course, Murong Jingwei chuckled. Princess Zhao Min is the #1 beauty in Mongolia. Even I am moved when I see her. You've been ambiguous with her for so long. Are you willing to let her get hurt? There will be opportunities to capture me in the future, but if she dies, she can't be resurrected. Song Qingshu nodded. What you said makes sense. Zhao Min immediately became anxious. Song Qingshu, don't worry about me. Kill him for me. During this period of time, the poison of the 3 corpses brain pill was hanging over her head like the sword of Damocles. It made her unable to eat or sleep in peace. Thinking that if she let him go today, she would still suffer from the 3 corpses brain pill in the future. She might as well perish together with him today. Murong Jingwei tightened his grip, making it difficult for her to speak. Don't worry. He can't bear to let you die. As long as he's a man, he can't bear to let you die. Song Qingshu ignored him and said to Zhao Min, don't worry. Not only will I kill him, but I will also save you. Murong Jingwei was so angry that he laughed. Although your martial arts are high, I'm not much worse than you now. At such a close distance, you definitely can't save her from my hands. Is that so? Song Qingshu smiled lightly, obviously not taking his words seriously. All of a sudden, icy snow and Su Quan groaned. Their bodies swayed, and they couldn't stand still. They hurriedly leaned against the wall to stabilize themselves. Zhao Min's body also went limp and looked like she was about to collapse. Murong Jingwei's expression changed, and he hurriedly pulled her back a few steps. He sniffed with the tip of his nose and suddenly laughed out loud. I was wondering why you were so confident. It turns out that you want to use the sorrowful, paralyzing wind to trick me. Song Qingshu frowned. Why are you fine? Murong Jingwei proudly smiled. Could it be that you've forgotten that I still have another identity? I'm one of the 4 great divine doctors, Ping Yizhi, and I'm also the disciple of Medicine King Merciless Hands. What can mere poison do to me? This is my miscalculation. Song Qingshu nodded, obviously a little annoyed. Murong Jingwei looked at icy snow and Su Quan, who were lying limp on the ground, and couldn't help but feel more proud. Ha! Not only did you fail to trick me, but you also made your helpers lose their combat power. It can be said that you suffered a double loss. If I want to deal with you, why would I need their help? Song Qingshu shook his head. Why are you still pretending now? Murong Jingwei snorted coldly and tightened his hand on Zhao Min's acupuncture point. I'll count to 3. Break your right arm, or I'll kill her. As soon as he said that, all the women's expressions changed, and they looked at Song Qingshu. If you kill her, you'll die without the hostage, Song Qingshu said calmly. So what? With the #1 beauty of Mongolia accompanying me in death, I could be said to be a romantic ghost. Murong Jingwe had been in the underworld for decades, and he had long been indifferent to life and death. If I break my right arm, how can I be your opponent? Not only will I not be able to save Miss Zhao, but I'll also cause the other two women to suffer. How can I be so unwise? Song Qing-shu was emotionless. It only proves that you love yourself more than anything else. Murong Jingwe lowered his head and chuckled in Zhao Min's ear. Princess, it seems that you're not high in his heart. He's actually reluctant to use an arm to save you. Zhao Min sneered. You still don't forget to sow discord at this juncture? If he's really stupid enough to agree to your condition, I'll look down on him. Even if I'm in his shoes, I'll make the same choice. Princess is indeed a heroine. It's a pity that you met the wrong person. Why don't you follow me in the future? Murong Jingwe impudently moved closer to Zhao Min's neck, intending to smell the delicate fragrance on her body. Suddenly, he only saw a flash of golden light and subconsciously looked up. He saw that Song Qing-shu was clearly standing there, but a golden figure suddenly rushed out from his body. Murong Jingwe was shocked and hurriedly wanted to grab Zhao Min to block in front of him. At the same time, he was a little hesitant to kill Zhao Min at this time. However, he soon knew that he did not have the energy to care about Zhao Min because he found that he could not even move a finger. He could only watch as the golden figure rushed towards him with a majestic force. When the other party's finger touched his forehead, he instantly felt a tremble from the depths of his soul. He knew that the other party only needed to think about it to destroy his soul. What kind of martial arts is this? Murong Jingwe asked with difficulty, but it was a pity that he could not speak at all. However, the other party seemed to have heard his doubts. The golden figure answered, 23 swords. Looking at the golden figure in front of him, which was almost the same as Song Qing-shu, Murong Jingwe seemed to have realized something. He said in shock, "This is not a martial art of the human world. It's indeed beyond the concept of secular martial arts." Song Qing-shu replied faintly. But isn't the divine knife slash the same? It's just that you haven't learned it well enough. It can only slash masters, not gods and demons. Song Qing-shu had learned 23 swords when he was practicing the Taishin Sutra on the Island of Heroes. Originally, it did not have a specific name. However, when Song Qing-shu thought of the killer move of the Sword Saint in the TV series Wind and Cloud in his previous life, he felt that the effects of the two were somewhat similar, so he named it. Ever since he learned it, Song Qing-shu had never used it. After all, with his martial arts, he did not need to use this killer move. The only two times he almost used it was when he was facing Huang Chong and the Sweeping Monk. At that time, when they saw the golden figure in his eyes, they were also greatly alarmed, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. However, in the end, it did not fight. This time, when he was dealing with Murong Jingwe, his opponent had learned the martial arts of the divine knife slash, which was already unfathomable. Coupled with a hostage, he was not sure that he could save Zhao Min, so he could only find a gap to use this move. 23 swords finally reappeared in the human world. Where is the antidote for the 3-corpse brain pill? The reason why Song Qing-shu did not kill him immediately was mainly to detoxify the antidote for Zhao Min antidote. Murong Jingwe knew clearly that this was the only thing that could save his life, so he could not say it out loud. Unfortunately, his soul was controlled, and his whole body seemed to be under his control, so he answered instinctively. The antidote? I don't have it, but the 3-corpse brain pill in the commandery princess's body is made of these 3 kinds of corpse insects. One is called ant green, and the other is, originally, even if there was no antidote, as long as he knew what kind of poisonous insects the 3-corpse brain pill was made of, it would not be difficult to make the antidote. However, when Murong Jingwe just finished talking about the corpse insects, there was a sudden noise outside. Everyone, surround this place. Don't even let a fly fly away. Pay attention to Prince Wei's safety later. The enemy's martial arts are very high. Everyone, be careful. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.